Hello and welcome to Six Part. Today I'm gonna start a new series. What if Deku was protected by MHA girls? Part 1. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a big thumbs up, and to watch more videos like this, subscribe to my channel and turn that bell notification on so you never miss an upload. Now wasting no more time, let's begin.
Midoriya Izuku, inheritor of the peace symbol's peculiarity and the torch of heroism. Everyone gets one. He is quick-witted and agile. Someone who possessed the qualities of a real hero. Someone who could undoubtedly handle the perils of life and evil. Was misplaced. Now a student was sprinting like a crazy person with a bag in his back. He was grateful that his training with All Might had greatly improved his strength because he was so thrilled about his first day at UA that he missed his station and had to dash to get to the school. But he was only able to sprint because he had to evade bullies and run to events to grab a limited edition All Might figure. But he would never say that aloud. He had discovered the hard way that some pastimes were best kept private. He saw a female who was emerging from an alley as he was running to the bus stop where he thought he would be dropped off in UA. The only feasible development was brought about by the accumulation of kinetic energy from running. The abrupt sensation of concrete caused them to fall on their behinds, yelling indignantly. Immediately after saying, "Ow, sorry," Izuku extended his hand to the girl. Now that he was seeing her, he noticed that she had blonde hair, was dressed in a sailor uniform, and had an expression on her cheeks that suggested she was flushing. Izuku couldn't help but notice how attractive her face was. The girl gazed at Izuku with a mixture of terror and interest. An animal stares at another when it is unsure whether to attack. Himiko Toga was a multifaceted individual who may be described as instinctive. Furthermore, many people believed that her mental state was far from ideal. But in reality, she was only a girl. One who merely requested a small amount of kindness in her life. So she smiled when she saw the freckled youngster with emerald hair holding out his hand, his eyes full of sympathy for her. Surprised at how easily she was stopped, she clasped his hand. Izuku was surprised by the girl's light weight, and he ended up drawing her near to him as a result of the unexpected pull. An amazing piece of equipment is the human body. Numerous components, bones, tissues, nerves, all function flawlessly together. Therefore, in order to prevent falling back, it can be instinctive to simply hold whatever you bring close to you. So Izuku did what a hero would do when he brought up the daughter and she came into contact with him. Or, indeed, any human. Hold her close to him to stop her. Izuku was talking furiously, embarrassed that he had hugged a lady he didn't know and who was on the floor due of him in the first place. Sorry. Is just why you are too light, and I didn't expected it and, he said. None of those digressions reached Himiko Toga. She was just grinning wildly and flushed from the embrace. There was nothing she wanted more than this. She was at a loss for words. It may be referred to as kindness. It had never struck Himiko Toga. She didn't want to lose the warmth that came from feeling it now. She would battle for this cozy sensation. She was determined not to let it go. The problem is that when Izuku ended the embrace, it was gone. Waking Himiko Toga from her reverie, she gave Izuku a curious glance. I apologize, but I have to leave, but, he said, pulling his notebook from his wallet. He swiftly drew on the paper with a pencil before tearing it out of the notebook. From his perspective, it was a crime, but in this instance, it was a necessary one. He scrawled his name and phone number, saying, that's my number, if why you are hurt call me. I will take responsibility. With the same reverence that an explorer takes the treasure he has been searching for his entire life, Himiko Toga noticed the piece of paper and took it. Himiko Toga. She smiled at him and spoke confidently. Despite his nervousness, Izuku spoke. The girl nodded and giggled as she recalled what he had said, Izuku Midoriya. Shouldn't you be running Izuku-kun? Izuku waved at the girl and apologized again, so shocked that he remembered why he was running in the first place. Toga merely laughed when she saw the piece of paper in her hands once more as his racing figure disappeared from view. She laughed like a girl who had a crush on a person she had just met. He has pretty handwriting, she said. Because that's precisely what took place. The first day of school was difficult for Pony Tsunodori. Being a foreigner, she had been instructed to make sure she arrived early for her first day of courses. Right now, she was now waiting for the bus at the stop, praying that she wouldn't be late because she had fallen asleep and missed the previous one. She simply moaned in anticipation now. The first student to arrive late would be her. Fantastic. She kept asking if he made it as she heard the sounds of someone running. She noticed a boy sprinting beside her who had green hair and freckles. He was sprinting so fast that he was running late. She realized something as she got a better look at him. He attended UA as well. Izuku looked at the other person waiting and groaned, realizing that he had reached the bus stop. She had horns on her head, a round face, a short horse nose, and blonde hair that reached her back. Izuku thought she was gorgeous. He was more interested in the girl's horns, though. So much so that he finally came up to her and stared at them. Pony Tsunodori had endured enough bullying because of her appearance. So this lad would be getting her horns if he wanted to make fun of her. She was obviously taken aback as the youngster grinned and his face appeared to light up as he talked. The youngster was asking a lot of questions. Your horns are amazing. Are they related to your quirk? What is your quirk? Does it relate to your tail? Your hair is long too. Is it connected to your quirk or just yours? He seemed somehow endearing to her. Just like a big excited dork. She was unsure of how accurate that had been. Nevertheless, she saw another aspect of the boy's demeanor and eyes. There was awe and admiration in every word he spoke and every inquiry he asked. He genuinely wanted to know everything because he thought she was fascinating, and he wasn't being sarcastic or insulting. She burst out laughing. You are a dork for quirks, aren't you? Izuku's endless barrage of inquiries came to an end, and the youngster was left feeling ashamed. This aspect of the boy was even more endearing to her. She had to make fun of him. He pointed to himself in embarrassment as she smiled and said, If you are so curious, why don't you touch them? I promise nothing bad will happen. She would get a nosebleed at the rate he was acting. This was excessive. She grinned and said, Of course we are the only ones here. Izuku nodded before continuing. Her smile and little nod said, I'm Izuku M. Midoriya, thank you for the chance. Izuku gulped as he was caught in the act. Pony Tsunodori, nice to meet you Midoriya. Now, are you trying to distract me from what I told you? Instead of jumping right to the topic, he hoped the girl with the noticeable Japanese accent would introduce herself or talk more. She pointed to her horns with a sly smile. She made both of her hands appear to be tiny horns and said, Come on, don't be shy. Izuku thought it was cute, but she was also terrifying because of how assertive she was. He moved progressively closer, letting his palm brush across the horn. Izuku obeyed, saying, Peeved, come on, hold it. The moment Pony Tsunodori made a moaning noise, he instantly flushed. Not so rough Midoriya. We just met. Izuku hurriedly let go of her horns, left, and rolled into a ball to escape the pain that was about to hit him. A lot of giggles turned into outright laughter as a result. She grinned proudly at her quirk and saw that Izuku was still on the ground, avoiding her. Oh my, you are adorable. There bone Midoriya. What's more, my quirk is horn cannon. I can shoot my horns and control them. Izuku. But I don't feel them, so if you were to hold them or break them, I would just grow another one, it said. She walked over and prodded him. She prodded him once again, observing the boy's embarrassment, and said, Hey, Midoriya? She was concerned that the youngster had been more reserved than she had anticipated. Hey, you didn't do anything bad, I was just joking with you. She therefore made the decision to use her best judgment to resolve this. Dangers. If Izuku was as bashful as she hoped, he would say, I am going to hug you if you don't look at me. He would glance at her in response to such a remark. And it did. He examined her slowly, his face flushed with embarrassment. She nodded and smiled softly, asking, Why you don't feel anything in them? She grinned and held out her hand to him, saying, Nothing at all, I was just joking with you. Izuku Midoriya was taken aback by the girl's request to be his friend, and if you are okay with it Midoriya, I would like us to be friends. He found himself grasping her hand and nodding enthusiastically. He drew nearer to her as she grinned. Who knows, maybe we can be closer one day. Needless to say, Izuku lost her temper at that sentence, and Pony burst out laughing. She hoped Izuku was in her class. He is the kind of friend she would adore having nearby. He treated her with deference, didn't make fun of her, and showed genuine interest in her peculiarity. The boy was also as nervous and bashful as he could be. She would adore all of the things that could make her happy. The two were shocked that they would still be able to be at the school in time as they boarded the bus. Izuku told Pony that he was genuinely interested in oddities and even requested if he could write more about her quirk. Pony explained that she was from the US but had been training her Japanese in the hopes of enrolling at UA. It goes without saying that she thought Izuku was cute and strange, and he wanted to write about her peculiarity, but he also seemed innocuous. She also wanted to know what he would write there. Izuku decided to begin writing about her peculiarity on the second page of the journal since she was intrigued. Before she could inquire about it, the bus pulled into the stop, and they both went outside to the UA doors. Pony suggested that if they were going to be late, it was better to be late together than alone, so they walked together. Izuku didn't want to be late, but he accepted it since he could tell she was worried despite her bravery. Pony Tsunotori was a multifaceted person. One of them expressed gratitude. She was so grateful when Izuku agreed to her suggestion that they go for a walk. Even though she didn't express it, she was grateful that Izuku had shown up at the bus stop. With his arrival, her dismal start to the day vanished. Izuku Midoriya may be considered her hero of the day. She therefore had to honor such bravery. She went to Izuku's side and grasped his hand. The boy didn't express any discomfort, but his freckles were hidden by the reddening of his face. It didn't seem strange to her for friends to stroll hand in hand, so she didn't understand why he was so shy. It goes without saying that those buddies were typically women. Izuku was so anxious that he didn't realize he had arrived at Class 1B, where Pony was meant to be. Despite his nerves, he entered her classroom even though he was meant to be in 1A. It goes without saying that Izuku received little attention from the early arriving students. But one in particular did. The guy said to Izuku, "Oh, greetings. I see you seem to be lost," and was guided by our dear classmate. He was taken aback by the blonde student's apparent kindness. A female strolled beside him in tow. A girl with red hair pulled back in a ponytail approached them and said, "Oh, hey. You two barely made it in time." Izuku thought their behavior was pleasant. Izuku didn't understand anything until the teacher showed up. He belonged to Class 1B. The instructor made note of this fact. "Oh, hey, you are supposed to be in 1A, you are not in my list," Sekijiro-kan says. Izuku couldn't help but ask Vlad King for his autograph after he talked. The child was so adorable that many of the students in the school couldn't help but think so. Even Nato Monoma thought he was a good guy. Pony Tsunotori waved at the shy hero as he said farewell before heading to his class after signing Izuku's notebook. Her smile caused Izuku to flush once again. "I will look for you at lunch," she said. The class's girls couldn't help but think the child was adorable when they witnessed this. Nato Monoma said, "Nice kid." Then, when class began, he returned his attention to his notes. It goes without saying that Izuku's tardiness did not impress his teacher. The teacher advised him to just go sit in his place when he tried to apologize. He was forced to sit behind in a corner near a window because he had arrived late. He let out a sigh, desiring a spot at the front. He felt someone prod him, which startled him. A female with short dark purple hair was grinning at him. She gazed at him with what appeared to be a sneer. The fact that she had a jack from her ear astounded Izuku. She cruelly mocked him, arriving late on the first day. "You got guts, EH?" This was not unexpected. He was the shy sort, as Kyoka Jiro had observed when she watched him conversing with the teacher. She also enjoyed the thought of being able to make fun of him. She was so preoccupied with her plans to tease him that she failed to see his amazed gaze as he pulled out a notebook and wrote down whatever he could see about her peculiarity. The sight of it startled him. Izuku hastily drew her after taking the notes. Few people are aware of Izuku's abilities. I just mean his mother when I say few. He was an excellent sketcher. He had a quick mind and an excellent talent for drawing individuals because of the many hours he spent observing peculiarities and taking notes. When Jiro noticed Izuku drawing her face with her typical smirk, she was the one who was shocked. She joked, "Oh, I look quite pretty, EH," as she got closer to Izuku and saw the notepad. At that moment, Izuku was feeling really anxious, and the girl simply gave him a thumbs up. Izuku nodded as she grinned at him and said, "Don't worry. Finish the sketch." His face was flushed. It would have to wait for the sketching. The instructor of their homeroom felt it was time to put their peculiarities to the test. It goes without saying that testing was enjoyable, challenging, and fun for those who had never had the opportunity to truly push themselves. Bakugo Katsuki was enjoying himself. He sincerely hoped that the person he considered to be a loser was aware of the disparity in their abilities. However, the loser was occupied with conversation with the female who had the ability to draw a bazooka from within herself. Izuku's barrage of inquiries would often make people uneasy. "That was amazing. Can you bring other things? What are the limits? Does the color is defined by you or the image? Is it chemical related to the material making it?" Momo Yaoyorozu was just enjoying herself while responding to his inquiries about her peculiarity. Talking with someone who could truly relate to her in the realm of knowledge was soothing to her. It's possible to be straightforward when discussing idiosyncrasies. However, these peculiarities compelled one to learn a variety of things. In Yaoyorozu's instance, using her quirk required a lot of learning. Therefore, most people never understood her when she talked about her eccentricity. They were given a basic concept but never the finer points. Being able to talk about her creation quirk in such depth was very soothing to her. Impressive, That means you are incredibly smart. To make the things you can, you need to learn their components in all sort of levels. Is no wonder you can bring the best out of your quirk. She replied with a wink. The fact that the boy was admiring her without trying made her cheeks slightly flush. Kyoka Jiro felt a little envious. Someone else was impressing the boy who had been so taken by her peculiarity. However, he appeared to be a quirk-loving nerd. But she was annoyed that he could so readily forget her peculiarity. Inquiring as to who he was referring to, Yaoyorozu said, "Is amazing. Today I am seeing all sorts of amazing quirks. Ah, I need to see her again." When Izuku was smiling and prodding his shoulder with one of the jacks, his musings stopped. The girl sitting next to me has jacks in her ears. They look amazing, and I am wondering how they work in. She grinned at him and said, "Oi, you didn't know my name, right? Kyoka Jiro. Nice to meet you, dork. You should remember the names of the people you sketch." Izuku blushed at the shame of not knowing the girl's name when they first met. "Izuku Midoriya," he nodded as he introduced himself. It's difficult to recall the name of someone with superhuman power who could toss a ball so far. Everyone had been shocked to watch Midoriya's throw, despite his seeming meekness. Izuku had been appreciative of what All Might had taught him. In fact, it was one of the first skills he taught him. Remember, using one for all without your body being used to it could be devastating. So, we will cheat. Cheat? Yes. You got a strength you cannot imagine, young Midoriya, so now, imagine what would happen if you were to throw a pebble with that level of strength. Anything you throw can become a deadly projectile. So be careful, but it also turns into a useful weapon to dissuade your enemies. Izuku remained stunned as he recalled how All Might had briefly split the sea in two by tossing a stone onto the shore. During the test, the technique of hurling stones or small pieces of debris was helpful. With greater force, he even threw a stone and saved a girl. All Might had informed him was that the throw would be stronger the more you wound it up. But he didn't remember the bit about the broken arm. Yaoyorozu's voice jolted him out of his reverie. "Sketch? Do you draw, Midoriya?" she said curiously, as she had assumed that someone with a strength enhancement quirk would like to lift dumbbells and go to the gym. Not drawing. Izuku gave her a nod. I sketch a bit." Izuku wasn't particularly bashful among others, but he was weak around girls. He had discovered that avoiding his bullies was the best way to deal with them. Although he was unaware of it, it also prevented his self-esteem from being harmed, which led to loneliness. Izuku's quirklessness was known to Katsuki Bakugo. He was able to evade him, but he always had a sneaking suspicion that he could have a speed enhancement quirk because of how much he ran. She said with a smirk, "A bit? Dude here is a professional." Izuku's cheeks turned red at the compliment about his drawing abilities. "He did a sketch of my face in less than a minute. He is great at it too. You should ask him to see it." Momo Yaoyorozu was an inquisitive young woman. Her vast understanding of the things she could make with her quirk had resulted from that. She also insisted on having her curiosity satisfied. She began to remove a piece of paper from her own arm, then a small piece of charcoal and a board of wood. She provided them to Izuku, even though they weren't the greatest tools for the job. Izuku brought the paper and the board to him and asked, "Mind showing me?" His cheeks turned red as he glanced at Yaoyorozu. When Jiro saw this, she chose to put her arm over Yaoyorozu's shoulders and stand close to her. She laughed and made Momo blush a little. "Difficulty drawing cute girls, Midoriya?" she asked. Izuku just took a deep breath and began sketching. The pupils who had completed the examination came up to them and concentrated on the boy drawing. In fact, Aizawa was also intrigued, but he had to complete evaluating the other 4 pupils first. It didn't take long at all. Izuku offered Jiro and Yaoyorozu the painting while hiding his face behind the board. Yaoyorozu was taken aback. In addition, Midoriya had accurately drawn her hair and face. In the same stance as before, he had included Jiro in the drawing as well, passing her arm over her shoulders. She was hardly impressed, to put it mildly. Izuku Midoriya thought she had a wonderful talent. In moments of joy, Momo Yaoyorozu had a way of being genuinely expressive. "Incredible. This is outstanding, Midoriya." And at the moment, she was too pleased to restrain herself from complimenting Midoriya. Increasing the number of students who were interested in what might be impressing the girl who received the highest results on the assessment. Lunch was served, and the remainder of the lesson moved along swiftly. Izuku was pleased that their teacher's threat had only served to motivate them to put in more effort. Jiro smiled at him when he felt a tap on his shoulder. When she saw the anxious boy blush, she grinned and said, "Hey, want to get lunch with us, Picasso?" A scream came from the door before she could continue. "Midoriya, let's have lunch together," a horned girl exclaimed. holding a bento above her head like a prize to brag about. All of the pupils, with the exception of a few who weren't interested, turned to face Midoriya in the classroom corner when she yelled the name. When she saw where they were staring, the horned girl waved to him. "Midoriya!" she exclaimed, gesturing enthusiastically to her bento box. Jiro gave Izuku a back pat after finding the entire situation amusing. She ended her statement with a giggle to conceal the fact that she had genuinely thought such things. "Look at you, Midoriya, so popular with the ladies. You might make me jealous, you know," she said. Izuku apologized and nodded to Jiro, saying they might have lunch later. "I will hold you to that," she said, pushing him toward the horned girl who grinned at him and was eager for their lunch. One student, who had blonde hair in spikes, started crying. It was beyond Denki Kaminari's comprehension. Jiro laughed and Mineta went to give him a back pat. "The class has just started and the nervous kid is a chick's magnet," Jiro said. Denki glanced at Mineta and said, "Don't worry, there are many more girls in school," before continuing. He could only cry more. "I don't want to hear that from you," he said. Izuku bumped into someone he had hoped to avoid on the first day as he and Pony were walking together. Bakugo was frequently in an unpleasant mood. "What's your problem, Deku? Looking to fight?" he said. He regarded Izuku with a mixture of bitterness and rage. When Izuku didn't have a quirk, he never understood why he tried, and he was never able to get him to quit. Or pretended not to have one. Did he believe they were not equals if he had that quirk? Was it why he decided to flee rather than try to fight back? Pony helped Izuku remain composed while she pointed to someone behind Bakugo, who was furious and lost in thought. Bakugo received a shoulder pat from a tall, blonde boy. Calmly, Monoma said, "Excuse me, those are my friends you are bothering. Wouldn't you prefer to go bother someone elsewhere? You are making us lose time of lunch." But in case he did anything, he had already stolen the other boy's peculiarity. Monoma only laughed. What's your problem? This is my business," instead. When Bakugo turned to see that no one was in the hall, he turned back to find that neither the blonde boy, Midoriya, nor the horned girl was there. "And those two are friends of mine. So why not go away before you make a scene? A teacher could come for you if you are not careful." "Oh, hello Vlad King." Monoma waved in the direction where Bakugo was not looking. As Monoma, Izuku, and Pony made their way to the stairs for a second story, a furious Bakugo began yelling obscenities. Izuku had little to say to defend Katsuki as Monoma spoke, saying, "Such an attitude, unbecoming of a hero. A barbarian like him in Class 1A? Hard to believe." However, Pony had other ideas. The other youngster grinned at them and walked toward them, saying, "Well, whatever the case. Thank you, Monoma." Izuku just strolled along Pony, who had mentioned that they would enjoy lunch, without asking where they were headed. They had arrived at the roof. The girl with the red hair in a ponytail was waiting there, smiling and waving at them. Pony nodded at the girl who approached and held out her hand to Midoriya, asking, "So all of us are here now?" After her, Monoma stepped next to her and offered his hand. "Itsuka Kendo, we didn't have a proper chance to greet each other in the morning." With a smug smirk, he told Itsuka that he had accomplished something. Monoma. "But you can call me your savior and hero for the rest of the day." She was startled by Izuku's comments before she could use her hand to cut his throat. He grinned innocently and meant what he was saying when he said, "Thank you, Monoma. You were my hero today." The praise wasn't used to Monoma. Not so naive. As if his classmate had cut his neck, he fell and was caught by Itsuka Kendo, who gazed at Midoriya in astonishment. She put Monoma on the floor and grinned, saying, Thank you." Izuku was unable to comprehend what had occurred. Pony, however, did. She had spent the entire morning watching Itsuka Kendo chop Monoma's neck when he became overconfident. She gave Izuku a shoulder pat as she walked. Pointing to the bento she had set on the floor, she said, "Don't worry, this is normal, but this is not." Kendo produced a mantle, and they set the food down. It was a straightforward supper, but it seemed nicer because they were eating on the roof. Izuku and his classmates were eating lunch. His eyes were pricked with tears of joy. Holding them back, he ate with Kendo and Pony and thanked them for the food. While Monoma woke up in the middle and didn't lose time to eat meals, both girls talked to Izuku about their classmates and their own test. Izuku discovered that Kendo's quirk enabled her to enlarge her hands, and Monoma was able to mimic other people's quirks. However, he clarified that he was constrained in that he might refer to them as duds. That would not function. Izuku was astonished and continued to ask questions. Kendo turned to face Pony, who smiled and nodded, confirming that Midoriya's attitude was exactly like that. It goes without saying that the commodity of a blossoming friendship was appreciated during lunch. In reality, Monoma liked Midoriya's approach and enjoyed receiving praise. Itsuka Kendo thought the child was very kind. She would dare say that he was charming, modest, and bashful. All she wanted to do was give him a hug and reassure him that everything will work out. She was taken aback when Pony, in her made-up situation, hugged Izuku while stating the same thing and kicked her in the thigh to separate them. Kendo turned to face Pony, who indicated her horns with her hands. She appeared to be a little envious. She would not be deterred. She was unable to keep the bashful child away. After noticing the unexpected sparks, Monoma tried to divert Izuku's attention by inquiring about the other boy's peculiarity, which he had successfully replicated. Izuku, of course, knew too much about the oddity. As Izuku began to babble about the oddity, he was able to divert Monoma's attention from a couple of girls who had abruptly started a mental debate about who could win the shy boy. Monoma sighed with relief. That was Monoma's vow to himself. He would protect Izuku. Or perish trying. Try mostly to avoid dying. It's challenging to keep someone safe in an environment full of eccentric people. After lunch, classes started up again. Kendo urged that they acquire Izuku a desk when Pony asked if they could bring him to their school. She might even give hers away. With a sigh, Itsuka Kendo explained that was not how things worked. They each moved in different directions. In order to get Izuku in their classroom, Monoma assured her that they would see her tomorrow, and Pony used the power of Kendo oddity. Only when Izuku assured her that they would meet up again tomorrow did she give in. Although the girl gave in, Izuku had to make another commitment to her. She genuinely wanted to maintain her relationship with her first pal. While listening to Aizawa's speech back in class, Izuku couldn't help but draw Itsuka Kendo, Monoma, and Pony Tsunodori. Jiro was drawn to the sketches and appeared interested in seeing Midoriya's work. It surprised her that someone who appeared so timid and submissive could appear so self-assured. His devotion was evident when he was sketching. Furthermore, it was clear from the way he described peculiarities that he genuinely believed each one was beneficial. She couldn't help but wonder if he was the kind of person who would enjoy attending a performance. He would undoubtedly look nice wearing a black shirt with a band's emblem on it. At those thoughts, she started to flush, battling herself. She found herself muttering to herself, "Bad Jiro, bad." Jiro was unaware that an invisible girl was laughing at the sight of the blushing girl. Mina Ashido was giggling as she drew in her own notebook. Glancing sideways, she noticed Jiro and Izuku Midoriya in the window to her left. Momo Yaoyorozu found the boy's skill to sketch appealing. Also referred to as the bazooka-wielding girl. After class concluded and everyone was getting ready to go, Mina went in the opposite direction and went up to Midoriya. She was about to ask him what he was drawing when she noticed that he was finishing a sketch of her. Apparently, she wasn't the only one who was bored. She was unaware that Izuku had already chosen to begin sketching the subject Aizawa had discussed. The female made the decision to make fun of him for it. There were numerous things about Izuku Midoriya. Look at you, drawing pretty girls again. Additionally, he was direct when he was in a panic. With a smile and a nod, Mina Ashido said, "Well, yes, but as because, I wanted to know more about your Quirk, not only because you were pretty." She was grateful that her skin wasn't transparent so her blush wouldn't come through. It took concentration to see that the girl was flushed. Oh. Her words, however, weren't so tactful as to conceal her feelings. She opted to give him a pat on the back after searching for assistance to the side but finding none. She said as she walked away, "Thanks." They had described her as pretty. And she enjoyed that sensation. She laughed and smiled as she walked away. Izuku didn't comprehend what had transpired, but he made the decision to return home rather than risk his luck. He was not surprised to find Monoma, Kendo, and Pony waiting for him at the door. Kendo gestured to the girl with the horns. Monoma pointed at Kendo and laughed. "She wouldn't leave until you showed up." Kendo was ready to scold Monoma when the three of them saw Izuku kneeling at them. She did support her idea though. "Thank you." Izuku was unable to recall the last time he had gone out with his school friends. All three of the 1B children did was smile. When Izuku explained that his station wasn't the same as Pony's and that he ended up there since he missed to leave his stop in time, they had a good time as they made their way to the station. The person who was most appreciative of the error was Pony. They wouldn't have met otherwise. With the exception of Pony, who asked Midoriya if they might ride the bus together again, they parted ways as soon as they arrived at the station. Izuku Midoriya was in a difficult situation. In one sense, he enjoyed riding the bus with her, but in another, he would have to be there sooner. She grinned broadly and said, "We can be late every day together." Of course, earlier, Izuku Midoriya told his mother back home that he had met friends. It goes without saying that the matriarch of the Midoriya family shed happy tears for her son. She also requested to view his daily sketches. She was shocked to find Izuku holding onto the notepad when she went to retrieve it. Izuku's mother was a busy woman who had fought tirelessly to provide Izuku with the assistance he required and had refused to let the house fall apart when her husband left. She refused to put down her son, Quirk or not. It goes without saying that she had to put a lot of effort into avoiding stress eating. Only her relentless work ethic and determination to support Izuku had allowed the matriarch of the Midoriya household to maintain her physical appearance. She became concerned when his youngster, the child she had always supported, abruptly stopped releasing his notebook. Did she fail? Was all of her labor insufficient? Did Izuku hang out with the wrong people? Was it necessary for her to request that Mitsuki strike Katsuki? Izuku was anxious and gave up his notebook when he adopted his mother's attitude. "Izuku, you didn't draw anything indecent? Did you?" However, his mother just made happy noises when she saw the drawings. Inko Midoriya adored her kid and wished him luck. "Oh my, she looks so cute. Izuku, you have a talent for art. Why not follow a career in media?" Furthermore, she would lie if she didn't admit that she looked for other options for his boy, even though she did support the desire to be a hero. Ironically, his mother thought that becoming a firefighter was a more dangerous job than being a painter, artist, sculptor, photographer, or firefighter. I might consider it. He was trustworthy no matter what, and he did think that it was helpful to know that there were other employment options in case everything failed. Izuku's phone rang, surprising both him and his mother. His number was not widely known. Izuku answered the phone even though he didn't recognize the caller. He said, "Hello?" and heard a female laugh. Izuku recalled that voice from the morning. "Hey, Izuku-kun." The girl laughed. "Toga? Did something happen?" The fact that he remembered her name gave her the same morning warmth because she hadn't expected him to. "I just wanted to call." Izuku heard vehicle and wind noises. "Are you outside?" Izuku became concerned when the girl remained silent for a while. Without giving it any thought, Izuku asked, "If I am, what would you do?" Inko Midoriya was proud of her boy and said, "Help you." She brought up a hero. More significantly, though, she had brought up a son with a pure heart and high morals. For a while, the phone was silent. The name of a park was the next thing Izuku heard. Additionally, Inko and Izuku decided it was time to go for a drive. Although the Midoriya family's car was little, it was useful for traveling to locations like parks when night fell. Stars in the afternoon sky hinted at the arrival of night. For Himiko Toga, the sound of automobiles and the chilly city wind were not unusual. She was seated on a park bench near a public phone, which was unusual. Out in the open, not trying to hide or steal food. Simply waiting. Waiting for the person who promised to come and assist her. She dreamed. A very basic dream in comparison to others. All she desired was a simpler life. To have the warmth she had today and not have to struggle so hard to keep safe. It's interesting that she longed for an unknown object. And accidentally discovered it. She was instructed to wait by the same source of warmth. It might have been a nasty joke. He might not show up, and abandon her to wait for an unattainable goal in the chilly night, making her feel foolish. However, Izuku Midoriya was the friendliest person she had ever encountered. He kept her in the dark about her filth. She didn't smell horrible, he said. The boy had been nice, and she was prepared to hold out for that warmth, for as long it took. She was therefore taken aback when she noticed a car pulling up near the park entrance and a freckled, green-haired boy who was searching everywhere before he noticed her. It was Izuku Midoriya. Whether it was an illusion or a dream, the last thing she wanted was to wake up from it. But she had previously experienced enough hunger to know it wasn't an illusion because illusions make it difficult to see things clearly. It wasn't a dream, she knew. He was happy that she waited for him because none of her dreams were as comforting as Izuku Midoriya embracing her and talking to her. The embrace of the woman with the green straight hair, who was clearly Izuku Midoriya's mother, was the warmest of all her dreams. Furthermore, the back seat of Inko Midoriya's tiny automobile, which she shared with Izuku, was the most comfortable seat in all of her dreams. No, that warmth was not a fantasy. Her body did something she had been meaning to do for a long time when she was greeted with such warmth. Get some rest. Knowing that she was safe for the first time in a long time, she let sleep to envelop her. When Izuku carefully moved her to a room for visits, she was unable to feel. The covers enveloping her were too cold for her to feel. Inko Midoriya's hand undoing her hairstyle so she could sleep more comfortably was not felt by her. The only feeling she experienced was that of being cared for by the two people from the Midoriya household. It was so intense that it nearly knocked her out. She had the loveliest of rests, and a grin came to her face while she slept this time. Because Izuku Midoriya's arms were a place where she felt like she belonged. Perhaps this was the cause of Himiko Toga's extreme suffering, was to wind up in Izuku Midoriya's arms. A fresh day would arrive tomorrow. And Himiko Toga would make sure to express gratitude to both for their generosity. Himiko Toga had a strange feeling. She didn't know why she felt so at ease, which made it strange, but not in a negative way. The roof was the first thing she saw as she awoke, followed by the bed she was lying on. She also observed that her regular haircut had been undone, with her blonde hair hanging behind her, as she began to extend herself. She had never slept so soundly. She began reflecting on what had transpired and how she had come to be in this predicament. She remembered as she was getting out of bed and discovered a note on a small table next to her. Although she hadn't read the note yet, she was familiar with its lovely calligraphy. Izuku, her expression lit up when she said his name. She read the note after taking it. Good morning, Toga. I wanted to let you know that my mom stayed behind to help you even though I had to leave for school. When I get back from school, I'll see you. Rest as much as you like and stay well. Izuku Midoriya. When Toga emerged from the room and saw the photos of the Midoriya family, she couldn't stop laughing. Seeing photos of Izuku with his mother, she strolled slowly. The images of Izuku wearing an All Might hoodie made her laugh. She heard a woman walking behind her say, "He is adorable, isn't he?" She recognized her face and hair as belonging to Izuku's mother, and the two of them were featured in every photo. He is. Toga noticed that Izuku's cheeks were flushed as she smiled. When Toga felt a hand on her shoulder, she noticed what Izuku's mother was holding in her other arm, towels. Inko Midoriya grinned and said, "I thought you might want to take a bath." Toga Himiko realized that Izuku's smile was a gift from his mother. "I would like that." It goes without saying that she wanted to be present. Izuku, meantime, was waiting for a bus at a bus stop with Pony by his side. He and the girl were talking eagerly about her classmates. Monoma, you saw him already. He can be smug, but he actually is a huge softie. Kendo is awesome. She is always like the mother of our group, and then there is a girl who holds her arm funnily, like a ghost, but she is super nice. Pony was pleased with her fellow students. Izuku also treated his own classmates in the same way. There is a boy who can release electricity. His name is Kaminari. Then there is a boy who could run incredibly fast because his legs have motors in them. I believe he said his name was Iida. Oh, then is a girl who can create anything so long as she knows all about the object. Her name is Momo Yayorozu, and there is a girl who sits next to me. She told me her name was Kyoka Jiru. Pony was thrilled to hear Izuku speak. On the inside, though, she was worried. Izuku's usage of the pronouns, her, and she, made Pony Tsunotori a little envious. She was concerned that she would be forgotten if Izuku made other acquaintances, even though it's not like they were romantically involved. Perhaps an overblown situation, but that's how fear works. It makes things appear more significant than they are. Izuku offered Pony his notepad, which he had taken from his bag. She observed Izuku's drawings of his class's lads and girls. He possessed a talent. When she realized how attractive Momo was, she became concerned. Kyoka also has a distinct aura. But when she saw her own page in the journal, all of her anxieties were in vain. Izuku had left room in the journal the last time so he could draw a picture of her. She actually questioned whether the sketch accurately depicted her appearance because it was so lovely. Izuku drew every little feature of her, including her hair, face, and eyes. When she noticed the entry she had made in his journal, she wanted to cry. Tsunotori, the pony. On my first day, I was running late and met my first friend at the bus stop. Her peculiarity is. The rest didn't appeal to her. In actuality, she had a designated spot in his notebook. She was also his very first pal. She brought Izuku over for an embrace after closing the journal. As the shy child thrashed and questioned what was happening, he was in a panic during the embrace. However, Pony's explanation was sufficient for him. He followed instructions and gave her a hug in return. Just hug me. On the bus, the girl was relishing the intimate touch. Whether or not the Japanese were against physical contact didn't matter to her. She needed to express how much he meant to her right now. And she was not letting him go, so he would just have to face the embarrassment if that happened. Not when she was already feeling so joyful and the day had only just begun. Izuku Midoriya would be the most wanted criminal if making people happy was a crime. Izuku's face was red, so he just gave her a hug. His humiliation, however, only increased when the bus driver gave him a thumbs up. What else could possibly happen? Izuku Midoriya discovered the hard way that some queries were inappropriate. What else could happen? Was one of them, as the answer to that question was an event. He was taken to the principal's office at this very moment. He had nerves, but he didn't remember doing anything wrong. Nedzu, the principal, observed Midoriya with interest. He was taken aback by how much Izuku Midoriya resembled a trapped wild beast. In actuality, he didn't behave that way either. Izuku became calmer as Nedzu said, "Midoriya, I believe you can relax, you have done nothing bad. I asked for you to come here for your exemplary knowledge actually." Nedzu realized immediately that Izuku Midoriya's normal state was one of nervousness and frequent squirming. Hoped that he might assist with the predicament he was in. "Midoriya, do you know the other courses we have in UA?" Izuku nodded. Nedzu nodded and said, "Hero, support and reserve, right?" Nedzu took a sip of the tea he had been holding and said, "Good, now, do you know what happens in the support course?" "Well, they build up the robots for the exam I believe, they also make uniforms repairs, they are really one of the solid bases for the school as they make all sort of items and inventions that help heroes in the school, right?" Nedzu gave a nod. It was fortunate that Midoriya was aware of what would occur. Izuku was thinking when he asked, "Now Midoriya, what do you believe would happen if a student worked non-stop?" And gave the most straightforward response he could. He had no idea, but he was taken aback when Nedzu clapped and dropped his teacup onto the table. "They would run out of materials?" he asked. Good Midoriya. Now you understand the problem. Now, the problem of those materials running out is we need to buy more, but she doesn't stop using them or blowing them up. She needs someone to help her stay calm, or help her carry scrap metal for her to use. So that's where you come in." Nedzu grinned as he displayed a picture of a stretch of coastline. "Toshinori told me you actually cleaned this beach with him, so I was wondering if you wouldn't mind helping Mei Hatsume with the gathering of metal." Izuku was taken aback. Nedzu laughed at this and said, "I can help, but why me?" Izuku was shocked to learn that they had recorded Hatsume's sketching. "I need someone who can keep Hatsume focused. Aizawa said yesterday you were sketching, and from the testimonies I gathered, and our surveillance feed. You have a talent for art, a talent I want you to share with Hatsume. You see, she says she must bring out her inventions to live before they fade from her memory. So if you help her and teach her to sketch, surely she would start keeping notes more and stop making our supplies run out." Izuku looked at Nedzu in hopes that he understood of the institution. Nedzu nodded and asked, "So the school doesn't have enough money? I see realities." Izuku stared down the floor shamefully and said, "We really overdid our budget with the giant robot. A robot you broke, I should add." But Nedzu merely chuckled. Izuku found himself nodding, and Nedzu grinned. "Don't worry, it was inevitable for that to break. So, can you help Hatsume?" He went to the desk and punched a button, saying, "Thank you, Midoriya." "Well then." It didn't take long for the door to open. "Could you let Hatsume inside?" "Thank you." A girl with shoulder-length salmon-pink hair entered from the opposite side. Her face was curvaceous and unkempt, and even though she had what appeared to be dust and oil stains on it, she was grinning. With joy and pleasure in her child, the girl said, "Principal, hey, if this is about yesterday's explosion, that wasn't really my baby this time. My babies are not to blame." She appeared to be too young to have children, which led Izuku to question whether she was referring to something else. Nedzu let out a sigh. He could see the documents. Powerloader would be stopping by shortly. Hatsume glanced at Nedzu before turning to face Izuku, who seemed to sense that she was examining him closely. "It's not about that, Hatsume. I think I found you a proper partner for your problem." She gave him a smile. She greeted him with a handshake and said, "Well, good to see you, partner." She laughed. Before Nedzu could say anything, Izuku's face flushed. "So when do you want to make babies?" She means her inventions, Midoriya. And I am afraid I have kept Izuku enough time away from Aizawa. You two will be given a permit to stay after classes so you can work together today." Before Nedzu went on, Hatsume grinned. "No, Hatsume, you are not allowed to live in the workshop. You will be given a space to work for yourself if this proves to be a good idea." Hatsume maintained a grin on her face. When Izuku used a handkerchief to wipe her face, she noticed that she was blinking in the same manner as Nedzu. Her face was cleared of the dust and the oily smear. She gave the boy Nedzu called Midoriya a startled glance. She grinned and said, "Hey, thanks, partner. I guess you will be really taking care of me." Izuku blushed, nodded, and left the room. Hatsume sat in front of Nedzu and smiled as he walked away. "Do you think he would mind being a father for my babies? He is totally a house husband material." His hands were delicate and my babies need to be tuned at times. She cracked a laugh. Nedzu apologized in silence. He may have unintentionally caused Midoriya to get into trouble. Mei Hatsume was a woman whose passion for inventions and her aspirations drove her. But she was also a high school student who enjoyed the gentle caress of the boy's handkerchief as it wiped her cheek. She pondered whether cleaning her own inventions made them feel that way. Even though it wasn't a cold day, Izuku Midoriya couldn't explain why he felt a chill run down his spine. They were informed that they would be sharing their class time with Class B for a specific exercise as the sessions progressed. For this, All Might had clarified that they would be battling with their classmates. There are villains and heroes. A straightforward exercise that would assess their offensive and defensive prowess as well as their ability to plan. This action was taken because All Might intended to maximize his time allotment by teaching both classes. The exercise's concept thrilled the pupils. Some weren't really interested in it. They would compete against teams of 3 due to the numbers. Some of the girls were more thrilled about the partnerships than others. However, All Might clarified that a ballot would be used to choose the pairings. The majority responded favorably to the results. Particularly, one side appeared to be handling it quite effectively. Konoko Komori, Reiko Yanagi, and Izuku Midoriya. But more than anything, Izuku was amazed by their peculiarities because they were just conversing with him. When he sounded more impressive, both females were impressed by the fact that he was gushing about their peculiarities. Pony and Kendo were observing the trio from the sidelines and letting out a sigh. They would have liked Izuku, but their own teams weren't awful. Kendo was on a team alongside Jiro Kirishima and Denki Kaminari. The Tetsu Steel Quirk was comparable to his hardening quirk. Pony was on a team with Asui Suju and Momo Yaoyorozu. Both girls were kind, but Pony really appreciated Suju's directness. When Pony and Kendo saw Monoma on a team with a tall boy who was telling him everything about his accomplishments, they both laughed inside. Monoma appeared to want to vanish from that discussion. The pleasant girl who had greeted him was his final comrade. It appeared that the girl's name was Ochako. It goes without saying that Monoma's eventual floating from the contact with the apologetic girl after she caused him to fall again amused both Kendo and Pony. In the meantime, Izuku concentrated on getting to know his colleagues better. Is amazing. Your spores can go everywhere, and you could stop villains immediately by making them choke with the spores and make them unconscious. You could put a stop to hostages situation with efficiency too. Konoko Komori wasn't used to receiving such high praise. If she claimed she didn't appreciate the cute boy complimenting her, she would still be lying. He thought Midoriya was pleasant. Additionally, she felt more secure when he talked about her eccentricity. She occasionally struggled with the value of her peculiarity, but she felt soothed by Izuku's self-assurance about it. Reiko Yanagi was merely taken aback by Midoriya's joyful appearance. To be honest, she thought he would despise them both. Mostly because Class A and Class B were always in competition for the top seats in the school, which is why Monoma stated this rivalry. To be honest, she didn't give a damn. However, she was appreciative of Midoriya's excitement. For some reason, seeing him pleased gave her the impression that everything would work out. Perhaps it was only that he was kind. She was taken aback when he suddenly gave her the identical smile that he had given Komori. Your quirk is great too. Maybe you can't push objects heavier than a person, but there are so many things you can actually throw that make you have a huge tactical advantage, and what's more, you don't even need to touch the object. Izuku Midoriya definitely liked oddities. Additionally, Reiko Yanagi discovered that she was acting in a way she hadn't anticipated. She put her hands in his shoulders and walked behind him. This gesture seemed strange to Konoko Komori. She never saw her doing it, even if they haven't spent much time together. I will haunt you. Konoko and Izuku thought this was strange. Was Reiko joking about something? Regarding her appearance? It goes without saying that Konoko laughed at her classmate. She made Izuku smile with her infectious laugh, and even if Reiko's face didn't smile, she was ecstatic. The exercise started when the ballot spoke. The villain squad, which included Izuku Midoriya, Reiko Yanagi, and Konoko Komori, was to be defeated by the hero team, which included Katsuki Bakugo, Shoto Todoroki, and Tetsu. The heroes anticipated a simple victory. They were prepared for a bad surprise, though. Konoko Komori was carrying something malevolent in the final flight of stairs. No one would anticipate such a nasty technology. Yes, it was a mushroom. It was tiny at the time. I present to you Calvacia gigantea, the giant puffball mushroom. But it would expand quickly because of her peculiarity. Reiko and Izuku nodded as she went over the strategy. This will release so many spores that the building will become infested with them. The spores will infest all the building though. Therefore, I think our best bet is to stay in the roof. It doesn't matter if the heroes reach the last floor as we will be safe in here with the briefcase. Might had been obvious. The heroes needed to learn about the terrible plan, so keep it away from them. It's actually that easy. Reiko was taken aback by Kaneko's air of confidence. But the mushroom will need darkness and humidity to grow much faster. So I will need your help, Izuku, she said. I need you to break a hole in the base of the building. The mushroom will grow quickly from there and the spores will release all around when they get inside. Reiko was staring at her. Reiko nodded. Although her expression didn't convey it, she was resolved to assist. I will make a second Calvasia. Reiko, if things go bad you will need to make sure that one hits the heroes. Let us go then. Let's show them the villains will win today. The air felt crowded to Katsuki, Todoroki, and Tetsu as soon as they entered. It was strange. After a battle broke out between Katsuki and Todoroki, they parted ways. It was Katsuki who fell first. He simply started to have respiratory problems, coughed, and passed out. Tetsu came last, followed by Todoroki. It was quite dangerous to be in a room full with spores without any windows open. All of the baddies were on the building's roof. With Reiko's assistance, Izuku created a hole in the roof, which they were able to fix. Izuku questioned Konoko, who was leaning to his left, so, how long should it take? Her hair obscured her eyes, making it difficult for him to see. However, her position was obviously causing her eyes to light up with joy. Reiko was next to him, leaning to the right. The girl who was a little taller was content to remain on the roof and observe the surroundings. An announcement interrupted her before she could finish, saying, with the level of saturation inside the building, not long. They're probably feeling the lack of air and... Konoko laughed, villain side wins, and in record time. Reiko and Izuku both congratulated her. What are you congratulating me for? This was all a team effort. If Reiko hadn't thrown the second mushroom so perfectly to the lower floors the saturation of spores wouldn't have been enough, and if you didn't make the hole for the first mushroom it wouldn't work. We're a team. Konoko experienced a feeling she rarely experienced. Self-assurance. She had self-assurance. Self-assurance is an oddity. Is the foundation of what some would dare refer to as the trifecta of people who value hard effort. Confidence turns into courage, which in turn gives us the want to strive harder. This desire then develops into dedication, which in turn leads to the determination to keep trying, which in turn leads to confidence, which gives us the belief that we can accomplish anything. By no means was Konoko Komori unattractive. Her mother constantly complimented her on the beauty of her eyes and hair. That she would be too strong for any boy to resist. According to her father, she resembled the mushrooms she adored. However, she didn't feel particularly good, but she felt fantastic right now as she sat on top of a building, waiting for a group of robots to remove the knocked-out kids and remove them from the structure they had unintentionally become stuck in. She glanced over her bangs at Izuku Midoriya's flushed face, who was doing his best not to flinch at the sight of two girls leaning on him. She also thought it was cute. He made her feel unique, which is why she thought he was adorable. She spoke with a slight smile on her face. With a smirk on her face and one eye visible through her bangs, she asked, Midoriya, has anyone told you that your hair looks like a puffball mushroom? It was the same with Reiko Yanagi. She struggled to communicate herself, let people know she cared, and was frequently made fun of for her appearance and voice. But now? She smiles on the inside as she sees things from such a high perspective. She had been led to believe that her quirk was fantastic by Izuku Midoriya. Despite its limitations, he maintained that it was great. In record time, they had now won the class's little exercise. What wasn't there to enjoy? Class B was obviously taken aback. They believed that Konoko Komori was not a fighter. However, she had just won thanks to a cunning plan. Eraserhead, Vlad King, and All Might had all been taken aback by the exercise's outcome. The villain team never even went to battle the heroes. They had won by sheer cunning. That wasn't necessary. Everyone could just chuckle. There was no doubt about it. I guess we all know who the MVP was for this match, right? MVP was Konoko Komori. If one were to ask her, though, she would have declared Izuku Midoriya the MVP merely because he gave her a sense of specialness, which gave her the confidence to accomplish anything. The following matches were entertaining to watch. Making Mineta float in the air with Hagakure was too much fun for Monoma. Iida and Ochako easily obtained the briefcase by going 2-on-1 with the final member, Abara Shozaki, who was Monoma's partner. Denki and Kendo created a scheme that would maximize Kirishima's peculiarity. He was physically thrown through a door that the opposing team was blocking. The human rocket that broke through the door caught the opposing team off guard. In the meantime, Pony made a fun plan with Suju and Momo. Momo sent a flashbang toward the villains by inserting it inside one of her horns. Getting the files from the blindfolded criminals was not too difficult for Suju. All things considered, the bouts were enjoyable and served as a kind of bonding activity. However, they were used by Monoma to demonstrate the superiority of his class. He did, however, commend Iida and Ochako for their excellent collaboration. Itsuka Kendo took pride in that minor accomplishment. Toga was wearing clean clothing in the Midoriya home. As they got her some clothes, Inko had instructed her to wear one of Izuku's shirts. She was obviously comfortable wearing the All Might tea. She couldn't recall when she had felt so pure. Before assisting her in putting on her trademark haircut, Inko had brushed her hair as well. All in all, Himiko Toga was content, and while she was happy, she was cooking to aid Inko. She had a lot of questions when she had a knife in her hand that wasn't bloody. Would she be able to play Izuku or Inko? No, she didn't want that either. She had something lovely for the first time in her life. She wouldn't spoil it, either. By all accounts, she was viewed as nasty, bad, and even. Mostly due of her peculiarity. However, she resisted allowing that to control her life. She had a place where she belonged now. She would put in a lot of effort to earn it. Put up a lot of effort to demonstrate her seriousness. She nodded enthusiastically. Himiko? Want to help me cut this? She can put in a lot of labor. She would still enjoy cutting things despite this. Finding a healthy substitute was all she needed to do. Cutting Izuku was not an option. But whoever injured him, she would cut. That she could accomplish with minimal difficulty. She would be able to walk in the light with Izuku. The topic of walking in the light comes up. After their workout, the children were hungry when lunchtime arrived at the school. A certain pair, however, felt very defensive. A female who resembled a mushroom had snatched away their opportunity to brag. Todoroki and Bakugo both wanted to speak to Midoriya. Izuku. Here, Izuku Midoriya's gaze was drawn to the classroom door as he turned to see who had called his name. He was shocked to see Konoko Komori and Reiko Yanagi entering the building with Monoma. Monoma had intended to make fun of the Class A pair that had fallen against Konoko, but she chose instead to meet Midoriya in the hopes that he would join them for lunch again. Izuku was curious about it when he visited Jiro, who appeared rather thoughtful. When Monoma got closer, he asked a question that would alter Kyoka's day. She was startled out of her reverie by the query, "Can Jiro come with us?" She wanted to spend more time with him, and she was a little reflective about it. During the class activity, she didn't have many opportunities to talk to him, and even when she did, he was with the other two girls. Did she really start to feel envious? Was she truly that interested in him? She was, indeed. Oh no, she was so pleased to hear him ask if she may join him and the company for lunch. As Monoma found himself grinning at how humorous the scene was to him, she teased the boy, who flushed. "Oh, I didn't know you missed my presence at lunch, Midoriya." Jiro had assumed he was simply stating, "Well, I did promise we would have lunch together." The manner in which one promises to see the other later rather than right away. However, Midoriya believed that the promise was genuine. Konoko and Reiko were shocked by Nato Monoma's response, which was, "Sure, the more the merrier, right?" The problem was that he was thinking on other things. It wasn't a Class A or B issue for him. The fact was easier. Izuku Midoriya must have liked the girl if he asked her to accompany them. Izuku Midoriya trusted his ability to discern people's character because he didn't appear to be the kind of youngster who hung around terrible crowds. Monoma couldn't help but see Bakugo and Todoroki as they gazed at Konoko Komori as he stepped outside. As he walked toward them, he smiled smugly. When they understood, they wondered what he meant when he said, "Hey, you might want to stop staring, she only has eyes for Midoriya after all." In fact, the girl was concentrating on Midoriya and wasn't paying any attention to the fact that she had defeated them. Her eyes were obscured by her bangs, but she was grinning as she gazed at them. You too remember to see Recovery Girl. Spore inhalation can cause harm, but properly treated by her should leave no sequels and you will probably avoid the need of a week of rest. Her voice was gentle. Because Konoko Komori had a strong quirk that might cause major injury, she was very compassionate in ensuring that people take care of their own health because she didn't want anybody else to suffer. Todoroki felt she was making fun of him, so he looked upset with her. He looked aside when an eraser flew behind him, breaking his gaze. The way they were staring at her companion bothered Reiko. When Izuku, Jiro, and Monoma arrived at the door and left the classroom, Konoko greeted him with an embrace. Izuku was surprised by the embrace. and Monoma simply laughed and continued to walk, signaling Jiro to follow suit. Monoma heard the female wearing the earjacks. When she asked, Monoma laughed and said, "So, what is that about?" Jiro saw the girl with silvery hair, whose hands appeared to be in a ghostly position, asking Izuku how he was doing, and he pointed to the shorter girl who was holding him again, saying, "I believe is pretty obvious." With a nod, Monoma asked, "So, they like him?" Jiro laughed at the accurate assessment of Izuku Midoriya's character. "I think so, that or they want to be really close friends with him. Can you blame them? He is nothing but kindness with legs." In order to get to Monoma and Jiro, Izuku strolled alongside Konoko and Reiko. The gang would then proceed to the roof to meet Pony and Kendo, who had prepared lunch. They were eating on the roof, which shocked Jiro. "Why?" Monoma replied. Jiro nodded in agreement, saying, "We like silence, and the roof is rather fresh this season." Jiro was among those who ate and talked. She couldn't help but see how pleasant lunch with Class B was. Although her own class wasn't very cohesive up until now, she could tell that the other class was clearly already closer. Jiro was unaware that intimacy had something to do with Izuku. Unbeknownst to him, he was the center of the group. In relation to that, he requested Pony's notepad. When they got off the bus, the girl grinned sheepishly and pulled it out to indicate that she had it with her, even though she had forgotten to return it. "I showed it to Monoma and Kendo. I hope you don't mind." Izuku grinned and assured them that he understood. Pony had been promised to secrecy, so he didn't know, and wouldn't know, how Monoma passed out once more while reading Izuku's notebook entry and how Kendo flushed upon seeing her happy face there. Reiko and Konoko were intrigued by the journal. They were thrilled when they saw it and requested Izuku if he could sketch them both together. As the others watched his sketch in silence, he nodded and went to work. He began sketching while Konoko and Reiko sat by him. No matter how much Jiro viewed it, it made no difference. Even yet, it was unexpected to see him draw. She is aware that he spent hundreds of hours honing his trade, even if he made it appear easy. Izuku had sketched in how many notebooks? Kyoka Jiro made the decision immediately. She wouldn't be scared to invite him to see her play if Izuku Midoriya, who was humiliated and flushed from having girls see him draw, wasn't scared to display his artistic talent. Kyoka became aware of another thought. Behind them was a pair of clothes that floated. Hagakure? The floating garments hurried off as though they were alert. Kyoka Jiro started to laugh. Who knew how long the invisible girl had been witnessing or following them? She remained silent. Toga Himiko was eating when Inko Midoriya discovered her lost in thought. Hearing her name, the girl became excited and nodded, asking, "Is everything okay, Toga?" She indicated the table and the house as a whole. "Yeah, is just, I am not used to this," she said. Inko gave a nod. Even though she didn't know the girl, she got a feeling she had been homeless for a while. Looking at her plate, Toga heard Inko laughing and said, "And I am afraid of when you will tell me to go." When Toga saw Inko's lovely face, her melancholy thoughts instantly vanished. "You speak as if we would tell you to go away." Toga found herself grinning so broadly that she couldn't comprehend why tears were streaming from her eyes. "I am sure Izuku will agree with me that there is no problem in having you live with us. That room is always empty, and I sure don't mind cooking for one more." Midoriya Inko did. She was only able to utter one phrase as she hugged Toga and walked. "Welcome home, Toga." The girl gripped Inko tightly, unwilling to let go. She would try her hardest to show that she was deserving of their company. She had to. The warmth of the Midoriya home was too strong for her to let go of. With the exception of two, everyone was returning to the school and heading to their classrooms as lunchtime was coming to a conclusion. Konoko Komori had different ideas as Class A and B entered their separate classrooms. She stopped Izuku by holding his hand. To signal him to keep quiet and follow her, she lifted a finger to her mouth. Curious about her desires, he followed her instructions. They had returned to the roof. Izuku noticed the pair of eyes staring at him before he could ask any questions. They had an almost feline appearance and were piercing. He thought they were attractive, and the fact that they were concealed by Konoko Komori's bangs only added to their allure. It was an honor for Izuku to see them. She gave him a smile. She grinned at him and opened her eyes to add, "I just wanted to say thanks, Izuku." Her eyes had not yet been seen by any of her classmates. Here, she was initially introducing them to Izuku Midoriya. However, that was because he had bestowed upon her something of great value. He had given her self-assurance, made her feel wonderful, reminded her of how amazing she was, just as her parents had advised her to have more self-confidence. Her mother used to tell her that no boy could possibly resist her beauty and gaze. With Izuku, she hoped that was the case. She bravely decided to kiss his cheek as she stepped forward. Izuku Midoriya was a multifaceted person, but the regent of romance, the swoon master. He wasn't. Thus, he did what anyone else could do when Konoko Komori gave him a gentle peck on the cheek. Turn into a mess and lose the ability to talk. As she gave him a hug, the other girl could only laugh. She let her hair brush against his cheek. Izuku was aware of its softness, but it didn't help him much. She continued to laugh. She eventually accepted his hand and walked back to her classroom. As she allowed her bangs to cover her eyes once more, she had only one thing to say. Her cheeks were flushed. As she escorted him to his classroom, she laughed and said, "Don't you change, Izuku. And you can call me Konoko from now on." After entering their own classes, the two pupils each entered their own fantasy world. In her dream, Konoko Komori saw Izuku riding a horse and posing as a knight, leading her to the horizon. In an attempt to unwind, Izuku Midoriya found himself drawing his entire classroom. Unfortunately, he always ended up drawing Konoko kissing his cheek when he drew the classroom. Izuku was shocked by how accurately he was able to depict himself as a mess. When Kyoka Jiro saw that sketch, she started laughing aloud and was stopped by Eraserhead's glance. She was still in awe of Izuku's popularity among the women. She was unaware of it. Reiko Yanagi was in her own dreamland, but Konoko wasn't either. She was simply holding Izuku's hand while they watched the sunset from the school's roof in her dream, which wasn't so much imagination. Nedzu instructed Izuku to visit Hatsume, so he headed to the support course session. He was shocked to see that the female was already there, fiddling with some goggles. She patted a chair beside her, let go of the goggles, and waved happily at him. Izuku saw that she had dust and grease on her face while he was walking. Apparently, she had been quite busy. As Izuku came closer, she grabbed his hand and tugged him to make it go more quickly. "Midoriya, so nice to see you, come here would you?" she said. At that point, she bowed before him. "I am sorry, I lied," she said, pleading with him with both hands. He let her continue even though he had no idea what was happening. "I actually know how to sketch, is requisite in order to be able to make my babies. I just wanted to show Powerloader all I could do so they would give me a workshop. It wasn't my intention to make it so you had to stay longer in school." Izuku laughed as she apologized. He grinned, recalling the amount of work he put in his training with All Might, and said, "It's okay, Hatsume. I understand the feeling of wanting to reach a goal with all your might." Hatsume grinned with relief as he glanced at Izuku. She glanced at the journals he held. Izuku grinned and asked, "What's up with the extras?" Hatsume nodded and grinned, then took one of the notebooks and her own pencil and began drawing. "Well, I thought you would like to sketch." Izuku was shocked by how many ideas Mei had in her head, and it goes without saying that the hour flew by as she shared all the machines she intended to use. Mei was also appreciative of any guidance Izuku could provide, and any observations were noted right away. Izuku explained that he would leave at the end of the hour, but not before he had to clean Hatsume's face of oil and dust once again. As he did so, she couldn't help but smile. The powerloader had come to shut down the workshop. He laughed, and she gestured to Izuku. "Look at that. Hatsume with her face without oil and dust. What is happening and who do I thank for you learning basic hygiene?" She said, "You can thank my husband here. He will help me with the babies," as Izuku flushed. Powerloader simply nodded and laughed. "I see, so you are Midoriya. Nedzu told me you would keep her in place an hour a few days. And at the lack of explosions, I will guess you did your job." Powerloader laughed. Hatsume put her cheek next to his before he could say anything. As he hurried Izuku out, Powerloader only laughed and said, "Of course he did. He is the perfect husband material." When Izuku said, "I hope you like children, you are going to be getting tons if you marry her," Powerloader found the childlike look endearing. Izuku was taken aback to discover Reiko Yanagi waiting at the school's entrance as he made his way outside. Her hands were in their customary position as she waved at him. With a shake of his head, she denied, "Yanagi? Did something happen?" As they made their way to the station, Izuku grinned and thanked her, saying, "I just wanted to wait for you. Pony and Konoko said you may be late. I said I didn't mind waiting for you." During this quiet journey, Izuku noticed something amusing. It was by no means awkward or lonely, even though he and Yanagi were not conversing. She was essentially hovering close to him, if Izuku was to believe that he was enjoying a particular time with her. He didn't know anything about Reiko Yanagi. He could tell she was content, though. He said goodbye to her as they arrived at the station, where the Izuku train arrived first, and he could tell she continued to stare at him until he disappeared. He was unable to hear the girl who was silent talk in a cheerful voice. Happy that she had waited for him, she said, "See you tomorrow, Izuku." She waited for her own train. When Izuku opened the door to his house, he was greeted with a firm embrace. A blonde girl greeted Izuku with a big smile and a firm hug. "Welcome home, Izuku," she said. He gave her a hug in return and the girl motioned for him to enter. "Thanks, Toga." The girl instructed him to sit on the couch once they were inside so they could watch a movie together. Izuku couldn't resist walking along Toga after seeing her look. Homework could wait. He could even complete it while waiting for Pony at the bus station early in the morning. He was taken aback to discover that Toga was wrapped in a blanket. The female in question was wearing a scary movie on TV while grinning mischievously. Izuku discovered that he was clutching Toga tightly. The girl grinned at the accomplishment of her scheme. Izuku's weakness for horror films was revealed to her by Inko Midoriya. Even if he aspired to be a hero and was capable of facing his personal anxieties when necessary, he lacked the confidence to do so in a movie. Something about his incapacity to alter the film's plot constantly got to him. Using the blanket to keep Izuku close to her, Toga grinned. "As okay, Izuku, I am here," Toga said, projecting an image of All Might. She was so awful that she made Izuku giggle. With his best version of All Might, Izuku said, "You mean? I am here." Toga laughed this time at how genuine it was. She questioned whether Izuku's quirk differed from hers in that it involved shapeshifting. Izuku gripped Toga more tightly during a particularly loud scene in the film. She gave him a hug in return and just chuckled. She wouldn't have been all that different from the movie's antagonist in the past, but that was then, and today was different. She would never injure others the way she did then. She would evolve. As challenging as it turned out. She realized why she was attempting when she saw Izuku's expression. Why was she making the effort to change her behavior? Therefore he was valuable. Because he fulfilled her request without expecting anything in return. He simply promised to assist her, and he did. He did assist her. She felt very naughty and kissed Izuku on the cheek as she felt him embracing her. He tried to break the embrace because of the feeling, but fear overcame him, and he gave Toga another hug. "You are lovely, Izuku." Toga had previously said a lot of falsehoods. She would now only tell Izuku and Inko the truth. For a little while, Izuku was unable to concentrate on the film or the terrifying murderer who was cutting campers because she was holding him closer. Oh no, he was only able to concentrate on his desire to draw a smiling Himiko Toga. The film continued, and Inko Midoriya arrived to wake Izuku and Toga as the film came to an end. However, she lacked the courage to do so. She discovered a cute picture she took with her phone. Izuku, who had fallen asleep, was clutching Himiko Toga as she leaned. "Adorable," she said with a smile as she switched off the lights and the TV. Inko Midoriya might not be fully aware of Himiko Toga's history, but that past didn't appeal to her. She was concerned about the young girl who was staying at her house and who was clearly attracted to his kid. Although the future is unclear and the past is already gone, today is a gift. That's why it's called present, after all. The Konoko Komori procedure was straightforward. Before heading to school, get up, take a bath, get ready, and have breakfast. It's actually that easy. She wanted her hair to seem especially shiny, so she was spending a little more time in the get-ready zone now. A certain blonde female with horse traits was also involved in this. However, a girl with light gray hair was pleased to see her hair shine. One girl in particular, with ginger hair and teal eyes, had a neatly styled ponytail and was grinning. These girls all shared a same trait. All of them belonged to U's Class B. They were all eager to see a certain boy who had made them feel better. The speed at which things may shift was astounding. Not even a week had passed since they started school. They all wanted to study and meet new people. They enjoyed themselves while becoming the best. Furthermore, even though it could seem difficult at first, they were taken aback by how well everything had gone. And all because of a cute boy with freckles and green hair. In the morning, every female uttered the name Izuku Midoriya. Has distinct meanings, yet the desire to see him is the same. Behind her bangs, one girl had a romantic look in her eyes. Safe behind an impenetrable expression, another had sought to learn more about him. Another felt that she could readily express such feelings through physical touch and that hurrying forward was the best course of action. This idea of hurrying ahead was shared by the other one. However, she also believed that one needed to accurately measure their movements. Similar to a flawless martial arts kata, every action was crucial and required accuracy while facing ahead. For this reason, she made the decision to be forthright. Additionally, her companion got a chop to the neck for making fun of her by claiming that the others were moving ahead while she was hiding. A pair of tickets was in the hand of another female. She was considering keeping them and inviting the boy she had been expecting to meet closer to the event, or returning them to her parents and telling them she only needed one. She desired to learn more about him. But more significantly, she desired for him to learn more about her. That they could do anything and nothing for a while. She desired to share that experience with him. A girl was observing a certain piece of paper that she had placed in a frame somewhere else, surrounded by the comforts that only wealth could buy. A drawing of her and a classmate was included. She asked for a small signature on the drew. It has a clear name written in lovely handwriting. Midoriya Izuku. It was said that she could make anything. She was also able to afford anything. But she felt something in her chest when she saw something like that, a work of beauty created with the unadulterated talent of a humble creator. The draw had been given to her for free. However, she had been searching for a drawing notebook for him all day yesterday. Not to compensate him. That wasn't the point. She did it because she wanted a reason to speak with him more. She enjoyed the way he talked about the objects around her and the way his eyes gleamed with wonder. She desired to remain near someone who shared her perspective. A manner that didn't consider goods monetary worth. However, they had a deeper meaning. Since they were unique. Around her, another girl was working with machinery, but she had carefully placed a small sketch she had made on her room's board. It was obviously leaping to the eye, surrounded by drawings and plans for the future. It was a drawing of a boy washing a girl's face. The exciting aspect was that they were surrounded by draw machines. In a sense, a girl who had never been in a romantic relationship was creating her own strategy to get the attention of someone who viewed her as the most significant item in a room full of machines. How did he accomplish that? How could he concentrate solely on her while ignoring the marvels of the machines around them? She wasn't a machine, a rare metal, or the blueprints for a previously unheard of invention. However, he gazed at her as though she were the most significant item in a treasure-filled room. And she wanted to know what that meant. Finally, a blonde girl was grinning and giving a hug to a boy who had spent the night by her side. Even after his arms released her, she knew he was still holding her and that she was holding him in return. She felt secure in his arms. Their relationship was beautiful because it was immaterial and invisible at the same time. In this way, the relationships between people who care for each other are beautiful. Because they are still in your heart even if you can't see them. The world's luckiest guy was Izuku Midoriya, he simply wasn't aware of it yet. Izuku was given a present that put him in a state of awe when he walked in the morning to the bus stop to go to school with Pony. A peck on the cheek. With a kiss on his cheek, Toga wished him a happy school day and assured him that she would be waiting for him with a movie. No scary movies this time. He was grinning because it pleased him to see her so content. He was unaware that he was the cause of her happiness. However, that's the way happiness sometimes works. You just don't know how it happens, it just happens. He took the homework out of his bag and began working on it as soon as he arrived at the stop. It was simple. A few inquiries concerning the use of oddities and the law. Izuku Midoriya claimed to know something, yet some people claim to know something when they don't. He did. By the time he heard a familiar set of steps, he had completed the assignment. He noticed Pony waving enthusiastically at him from the right. In the pause, she sat down beside him. Her sitting near him wasn't strange. Her eyes appeared to question him whether he noticed anything odd, but he smiled as he looked at her. He gave her a nod, and he did, even though the nod was an affirmative. She continued to stare at him, asking him to speak. He blushed a little, and involuntary, "Do I have to?" lingering in the air. She nodded to him with a smile. He inhaled and hoped he could say it without feeling so anxious. With 3 words, "Your hair looks," after he managed to say 3 words, Pony laughed and encouraged him to continue. "It looks," she continued to nod enthusiastically. She anticipated hearing the C word. She said, her face frozen in a smile, "It looks beautiful." She had brushed her hair a little more today because she expected to be called cute. For her, however, being referred to be gorgeous was like winning the lottery. He was embarrassed and covered his flushed face with his hands after she acknowledged his bravery with a cheek kiss. She chuckled as she gave him a hug, but the purpose of the embrace was to take him to the bus because he was stuck in place. "Thank you, Izuku. You are looking cute today too. Even more, seeing your face like that." Izuku Midoriya's adorable shyness was brought to Pony Tsunotori's attention at such moments. They were discussing their classes and the day as a whole on the bus. Pony claimed that Izuku's ability to get Konoko to talk so much had a lasting impression on her class. The girl with the mushroom quirk had apparently taken to praising him. Something that shocked them because she hadn't talked much on their first day together. Pony agreed with Izuku when she stated she was kind. He was mentioned by Reiko Yanagi as well. Even their teacher was taken aback because he had promised that as part of a quick bonding activity, each student would share one item they like. According to Reiko, Izuku Midoriya caused some of the males to snicker and others to be surprised. She laughed when she saw Izuku's anguish at being the object of someone's devotion, saying, "I think she might fancy you, Izuku." She could spend her entire life making fun of him. She spoke again, whispering in his ear, determined to see that cherry color in his face once more. It goes without saying that Izuku covered his face with his hands in response to Pony's cruel taunting. "I may be fancying you myself, you know?" He was unaware that Pony Tsunodori never said anything she didn't believe. She was serious when she admitted to having feelings for him. It goes without saying that he was embarrassed by Pony's remarks. Izuku would continue to accompany her to school. Izuku was unaware of it. However, Pony was considering the possibility of going on a date with him. The idea that the guy was meant to invite the girl was familiar to her. However, she chose to disregard that. She would be the one taking the boy out. Whether necessary, she would visit his home and ask his parents whether he could leave. Pony asked Izuku if he could walk her to the classroom when they got to the school. It was fine with Izuku. Since Kamui Woods prevented an accident on their way to school, they had arrived much earlier. If it had been Mount Lady, all necessary damage management and cleaning would have been delayed. She was a poor example of a female hero, according to Pony. Izuku claimed that all she needed to do was improve her ability to remember that helping others, not celebrity, was what really mattered. Pony chuckled as she glanced at Izuku. He would, of course, stand up for heroes. Some people even like Mount Lady. She wanted to claim that she was attractive, which is why he stated that. However, she chose to save that remark for later because she remembered that she had made fun of him enough on the bus. As they made their way to her classroom through the corridors, she noticed that Izuku was still restless while she held his hand. She smiled softly and asked, "Are you always going to be so nervous when I hold your hand?" Izuku gave her a nod. The gentle smile grew sly. She took his hand, but she began slowly making circles in his palm with her thumb. "Oh, then I guess I will have to give you a reason to be nervous." Pony giggled and Izuku flushed from the pleasure. The smile on her face conveyed, "You are adorable." She saw Konoko and Reiko waving at them from the door of her classroom as they got closer. Konoko smiled and said, "Good morning, Izuku," while Reiko said something more straightforward, "Hello," to him. Izuku greeted them both. Konoko held up a finger to him and said, "Good morning, Yanagi." "Good morning, Komori." She grinned and pointed to his face. As he anxiously repeated his welcome, she grinned and replied, "Konoko. Remember, I said you could call me Konoko?" Good morning, Konoko." Before he could finish the sentence, Konoko rushed to embrace him. Reiko pointed at herself, and Izuku felt a tiny tap in his shoulder. "Ah, much better. Good morning, Izuku." He received the message right away. "Ah, good morning, Reiko." Izuku caught the girl's attention while they were so near him. Both girls grinned and asked, "Say, did you two do something to your hair?" More accurately, Konoko grinned as Reiko nodded, but her face remained the same. "It's very kind of you to notice." Midoriya grinned, and Konoko's joy was infectious. But it had to be halted, like a lot other things. Izuku sensed a hand gripping his uniform's neck. Monoma was there to greet him. Izuku's eyes opened in surprise as he thanked Monoma, saying, "You need to get to your own classroom soon or you will be late." The girls gave the boy a furious look as he ran. His hands went up in a gesture of simulated submission. As Itsuka Kendo entered and observed the faces of the girls and Monoma, he said, "He is from Class A, you know? He needs to be in his own classroom." The three girls nodded and gestured to Monoma, saying, "Don't tell me I missed Midoriya." With a glance at the girls, he mouthed the word, "Traitors." All he could do was sigh until he saw the shadow of a gigantic hand approaching. "It goes without saying that, the things I do to keep you safe." He succumbed to Itsuka Kendo's chop with ease. Kyoka Jiro was fiddling with concert tickets in Class A. She was uncertain about what to do. That's when Mina Ishido appeared. "Oh, tickets for the Rolling Fires?" she asked, smiling as she glanced at Jiro, who was nodding. Jiro grinned as she held them with pride. "Can I go? I've been wanting to go to one of their concerts, but they usually don't play in the city. I am surprised they came here this time, but all the tickets were gone." She had been fortunate to receive a pair of tickets from her dad, who said she may use them. "Last pair. I was lucky myself." Usually, after supper, her dad would accompany her mom to a performance. However, he inquired about it this time when Jiro requested for tickets. As she turned to face the ground, his father arched an eyebrow and asked, You want to go? Who are you taking with you? This was a topic she did not want to have. A friend. An ambiguous response, and her father was aware of it. He grinned as her cheeks turned red. Oh, aren't we being evasive? Is this a friend, a guy? Or a girl? You know I am not going to judge you. Her father nodded and said, as a guy. Although she wasn't quite saved, her mother arrived. Her mother sounded thrilled at the possibility that it was that boy. Is he the boy you said before? The one who made a sketch of your smile? She said. Though her cheeks betrayed her, she refused to verify her statements. He took the envelope with the tickets in front of her and said, well, I suppose I can give you my tickets, on one condition though. We want to meet him, so if you take the tickets, you have to invite him for dinner in 2 weeks, she grinned. But she refused to give in. A month, she knew her father, 1 week. A month. Her mother gave her the packet while giggling. A month, Kyoka. But if you don't do your part of the deal you will have to pay for those tickets. That was possible. How much might they cost? They are front row in the VIP zone. Oh my, it cost a lot. Mina pleaded with her, can I go with you, please? However, she was already planning the tickets. Mina groaned and turned to the tickets, saying, sorry, Mina, I am hoping to invite someone. Rumor had it that Kaminari had a thing for Kyoka, so, you wouldn't be inviting Kaminari by chance, would you? The rumors spread quickly. Kyoka's response was succinct and straightforward, no, Mina grinned. Kyoka gave Mina a look that suggested she didn't trust her when she said, come on. Who are you taking? I won't say a word. Kyoka sighs. Ah, come on, please. No means no, Mina. Mina begged Kyoka as she gazed at her. She was unable to give in. However, she discovered that Mina's eyes were too cute. Ah. I am inviting Midoriya, she whispered. Mina really didn't hear Kyoka's whisper, even though one would typically have the other repeat what they said in a playful way. She said, deadpan, I couldn't hear your whisper. Kyoka let out a sigh and turned to face Mina, who was speaking plainly. As she said, Izuku Midoriya. I am inviting Midoriya. The boy in question came into the classroom and approached her and Mina. She put the tickets away right away. Mina walked over to her and whispered to her after giving her a raised eyebrow. Kyoka turned to Mina and asked, what happened with the confidence of before? She said in a whisper, as a plan in progress, okay. Mina understood immediately and nodded. Kyoka was infatuated with Izuku. She gave Kyoka a wink. I ship it, and proceeded to her own workstation, leaving Kyoka perplexed by her statement. Kyoka made the decision to apply the prior confidence when Izuku seated at his desk. She put the tickets on his desk and went beside him. Midoriya. Izuku glanced at the tickets before turning to face a smiling Kyoka. It was a slight smile instead of her typical smirk. She hoped Izuku wouldn't see how anxious she had been. I thought we could go to the concert together if you were not busy this Saturday. Izuku had really been more anxious, but he felt better when he saw Kyoka smiling. As someone who had never attended a performance before, he found himself smiling broadly and nodding. According to the girl in question, I would like that. I have never been to a concert, thank you Jiro. She grinned enthusiastically. Jiro silently swore at herself for being so thrilled. Well then, we will make it an unforgettable concert for you. I will pick you up, she said. She said that she would come get him. She would therefore be requesting permission from her parents to bring Izuku along. Jiro grinned and nodded, but he was only able to think of one thing. Oh thank you Jiro. I would appreciate that. I have never been to a concert, so I don't know how should I dress or anything. I curse you, cute boy with freckles. Are you aware of your beautiful behavior? How am I going to refuse that? Kyoka Jiro agreed and continued by telling Izuku that in order to be on time, she would go pick him up on Saturday with her parents. The topic of Midnight's class was art, and it goes without saying that she liked Izuku right away. To Yaoyorozu's dismay, Izuku was an expert sketch artist. In the hopes that they might begin to bond, she wanted to talk to Izuku during painting class. But that strategy was thwarted by the fact that Midnight was present to observe him at work. When Mina Ishido, who considers herself a master of romance, witnessed the scenario between Izuku and Yaoyorozu, she made the decision to step in. Or the absence of one. She observed that her attempts to speak had been unsuccessful. Thus, it was her moment to shine and contribute to the search for love. Thus, she took the only action that sprang to mind. She smiled at the teacher, who blinked and realized she was meant to be assisting kids, not swooning over someone's talent. Excuse me, Midnight. Can you help me? I am trying to think of what to sketch. She headed in Mina's direction. After noticing Mina, Yaoyorozu gave her a brief thank you. Mina gestured for her to do whatever it was she wanted to do. Without wasting any time, Momo Yaoyorozu moved her easel next to Izuku and gave him a quick glance. He saw her approaching, turned to face her, and gave her a slight smile. She said, "Hello, Midoriya." He returned the greeting. "Hello, Yaoyorozu." He then went back to drawing All Might in his traditional costume. He was so quick that Momo was impressed. However, she moved her attention back to something else. As he worked, she picked up her pencil and began sketching Izuku. Compared to his sketches, hers were rougher. Midoriya was precise and unambiguous. Although hers were unpolished and had a few novice errors, the overall impression was unmistakable. By the time she completed drawing his face and half of his body, Izuku had completed his All Might image. She thought it would be an excellent opportunity to talk to him. She swore to herself, "Midoriya, do you like sketching?" And she claimed to be among the brightest students? Izuku didn't think the question was stupid. He gave her a smile. He grinned at her, and she smiled back, saying, "I do, is something I can do all the time. And I am good at it too." She was pleased to see him happy. "Say, my mother told me of an art exhibition during the Sunday. I was wondering if you would like to come with me." She released it. She assumed that the art show was her greatest opportunity to spend time with him alone. Izuku was unaware of this. He assumed she was merely seeking companionship. Izuku was taken aback when Yaoyorozu said, "I would love to go, but are you sure? I mean, you could invite someone else like Todoroki." "I would love if it was you though," she said, somewhat astonished by what she had said. Although Momo Yaoyorozu was a rational person, she also possessed a passion that manifested itself in her desire to learn more and better herself. Now, though, it now manifested as a desire to spend time with Izuku. To learn more about him. Izuku's cheeks flushed at Yaoyorozu's remarks, and he found himself nodding. Yaoyorozu grinned. He nodded and gave Yaoyorozu his phone. "Thank you, Izuku. I will pick you up, is that fine?" he asked. She gave him a smile. Izuku noticed what Yaoyorozu had been drawing at that moment. The image was of him. Yaoyorozu had a sheepish expression. "I think you are a good model to draw," she swore at her own words and herself. However, she couldn't help but smile when she noticed Izuku's bashful smile. He went on to give her some pointers so that when she worked around it, her sketch wouldn't get dirty, saying, "Thanks, you are good, Yaoyorozu." Yaoyorozu was paying close attention to every piece of advice. She enjoyed seeing this side of Izuku. The side that expressed love for what he or others did. In essence, she admired Izuku's attitude. While Midnight was severely instructing Mina Ashido in the fundamentals of sketching, she was cursing her necessity to assist Yaoyorozu. Nodding, she swore, "Come on, 5 more repetitions." She was reminded by Midnight that she needed to obtain a decent mark for her diversionary comment, "Damn it, Momo, you better get some action." Izuku was about to head to the roof for lunch when he got into a fight with a female who had blue eyes and long blue hair. She looked nice to Izuku. He attempted to help her stand and apologized, but to his surprise, the girl got up on her own using what appeared to be her peculiarity. Izuku grinned right away and started talking to the girl. Izuku saw that the girl was staring at him with interest and grinned. "How did you do that? Was it a sort of wave? It isn't magnetism, right? The floor isn't metal, and if it's geomagnetically we aren't really on ground level. It is like an energy wave? Can you propel yourself to fly?" Izuku looked sheepishly at the floor as she smiled and said, "It is my quirk, is called shockwave. If I focus on my feet I can actually fly, but if I used it through my hands I can knock pretty much everyone. I don't believe is energy, more like air, and who are you?" He hadn't remembered to say hello. "Izuku Midoriya." He called out to her. She smiled as she accepted it with excitement and shook it with the same feeling. "Nejire Hido," she exclaimed, grinning, and continued to leave Izuku in her arms. She continued to walk with him outside, surprising him. She took Izuku somewhere he didn't understand. Additionally, he observed that several men and women appeared to be making strange remarks regarding the Hido. Nejire Hido felt ecstatic. Ever since she was named one of the top 3 in the UA, she had discovered that she couldn't make friends with Mirio and Tamaki. Numerous individuals held her in high regard. It was not the same as having a friend, though. Thus, she understood right away that she wanted to become friends with Izuku Midoriya when he showed up. Seeing someone who didn't behave strange around her was a welcome change. He was real, she knew. Not just because of his responses, but also because of how much he was requesting of her peculiarity. Thus, she had to protect him and ensure the friendship. She needed to get the hook and tug the line that she had already laid out. That's how Tamaki described fishing to her, anyway. Izuku was just unable to comprehend that a lovely female had essentially abducted him. The remainder of the crew was on the roof during this entire event. They made the decision to eat lunch. If Izuku wasn't present, it must have been due to an incident. Nato Monoma had made the decision to attempt joking about it. Seeing the face of Itsuka Kendo in particular, he said, "Come on, surely isn't something big. I mean, what? Do you really believe a girl just took him away? I mean, sure Midoriya has that cute charm thing going on, but come on. Relax." She was quite upset. She had made the decision to approach Izuku, but she was unsuccessful since Monoma sent him to his classroom. And more. Izuku called them all attractive in the morning, observing that their haircut looked better than normal, Reiko told her. When Monoma claimed that they were identical, he was slapped across the neck. It goes without saying that Monoma intended to make a joke in order to appease Itsuka Kendo. She had taken Izuku back with Nejire to an area outside the school building, where a boy was eating takoyaki and another appeared to be buried, as Izuku could only see his head and neck above the ground. Izuku heard the head speak. He remarked, obviously oblivious to the jest, "Ah, a new face. That is new," while glancing at the boy who was eating. The boy named Tamaki stared at the head and said, "Oh come on Tamaki." It was funny, his expression was solemn. The youngster named Mirio gasped as he began to fall under the soil, shocking Izuku. "Stay being a hero. You are not a good comedian, Mirio." Izuku noticed the boy behind him before he could ask. Izuku gave a startled shriek as he appeared to be naked. "Greetings." Tamaki bestowed a uniform upon Mirio. "Get dressed. He is not used at your quirk." Mirio nodded bewilderedly, blinking. "Good thinking, Tamaki." Mirio's uniform hung from his head as he moved like a shark on land, and his body once more sank beneath the surface. In order to catch Izuku's attention, Nejire Hado laughed. "They are my friends. The blonde one who you saw going down is Mirio Tagata. The one who looks moody but actually is shy and has a heart of gold is Tamaki Imajiki." Each of them was pointed out as she talked. Tamaki gave Izuku a curious glance before turning his attention to the ground. Izuku nodded and asked, "You are a first year, right?" He continued eating as Mirio showed interest, staring at Izuku and extending his hand. "I see. Well, we are third years. Don't let that stop you though. We don't care much of the grade you are, and since Nejire brought you, I guess you can't be that bad." Tamaki said, "Well, it's a pleasure to meet you. I am." Mirio grinned and blinked, saying, "Nejire already presented you." He continued to hold out his hand as Izuku grasped it for a handshake, saying, "Oh, thanks Nejire." The other youngster grinned and excitedly shook Izuku, saying, "Izuku Midoriya." Mirio brought Tamaki over with minimal effort with her other arm, and the three of them embraced. "It's a pleasure to meet you, Izuku," she said. A tentacle suddenly materialized in front of Izuku, who exclaimed, "He is my best friend Tamaki. Don't let his look fool you. He has the heart of a hero beating inside him." And an octopus tentacle in my hand. Although Tamaki had anticipated that Izuku would be disgusted by his peculiarity, he was surprised by how large his eyes appeared to get as he grinned. Izuku was thrilled to see a strangeness so different from what he was used to. "Amazing. Can you shapeshift into anything? Or is it related to the takoyaki you ate? Can you turn parts of your body into the limb of any animal you consumed?" Izuku turned to face Mirio, who laughed. "And you too? You were able to phase around the floor as if nothing. Can you phase through anything? Is there a limit to the time you can do it?" Izuku was amazed and Nejire was giggling. She wanted to be friends with him because of this. He shared her curiosity. In actuality, Mirio and Tamaki had similar ideas in several situations. While he was looking at him, Mirio was also looking at Tamaki. Mirio said, "He is just like Nejire." With excitement. Their first day together was exactly like this. Izuku, however, was a boy, which lessened the awkwardness. Nejire didn't care to prod him. Izuku was also a good kid, according to this. With a sense of intimacy, Tamaki exclaimed, "He is just like Nejire." Izuku was younger, but this day was just like the day they first met. He wasn't prepared to bring back Nejire's horrors. All he could expect was that Izuku would respect his personal space. Izuku continued to ask questions when the hug stopped, and both guys responded. Then an unexpected event occurred. At least Tamaki and Mirio were taken aback. Nejire brought Izuku closer to her by giving him a back embrace. Mirio and Tamaki squinted in response to the statement, "Hey, he is my new friend. You already got each other as besties, don't take mine away." Since they had known one another since childhood, it goes without saying that they were best friends. They were still taken aback by her seeming possessiveness of Izuku. With mock submission, Mirio held out his hands. Nejire remarked, "He is your friend Nejire. It's not like we would try anything." She gave both of them a disbelieving look. When Nejire continued, Tamaki uttered the words, "I brought Izuku here with pure intentions of him knowing you too since you are my best friends." She specifically glanced at Tamaki and said, "But I won't let you take him away." Mirio laughed at this since it was a humorous notion for Tamaki to take Izuku away. Tamaki arched an eyebrow at Mirio and said, "Oh come on Nejire, I think I have more chances of stealing Izuku than Tamaki." Mirio laughed and said, "What do you mean? I could steal him if I wanted." As Nejire moaned and took Izuku with her, Tamaki turned to Mirio and said, "Oh come on Tamaki. My quirk is better suited for that." She sighed as she held Izuku's hand and made him flush, asking, "Can you believe that?" Nejire grinned and let go of Izuku's hand when she sought a quiet place. She kept both of her hands together and gazed at him with interest. Izuku stared at the inquiry. "Tell me Izuku, when was the last time you let your heart decide?" Nejire swept him without warning while laughing, carrying him throughout like a bride. "You might want to hug me back." Without further ado, she unleashed her quirk, sending them both hurtling. Nejire giggled when Izuku hugged him close. Nejire kept Izuku's eyes balanced, and Izuku closed them. When Izuku heard Nejire giggle, he closed his eyes. Izuku chose to take a chance and opened his eyes. "You know, Izuku, if you keep your eyes closed, you will never see the beauty around, and I am not speaking of me." Over the school, they were soaring. In actuality, Izuku could see all of UA because they were hovering. He smiled to himself. It was amazing to see the school from such a great altitude, and he was astounded to see the surroundings as well. Nejire Hado liked to think of herself as an excellent character evaluator. She also smiled when she saw Izuku's happy face and the look on his face when he saw something she saw every day. She never lost the joy that came with taking to the skies. She could see from Izuku's expression that he wouldn't lose it either. His face was cute, she thought. Nejire Hado was a multifaceted person. One of them was impulsive. She carried Izuku around the school, kissing him carelessly in the cheek. As Nejire giggled and pulled Izuku toward her, he flushed. She squeezed him more tightly, causing Izuku to flush. "It's decided. I am keeping you. You're mine from now on, Izuku." Izuku chose to talk to the person she thought would be hers while she was floating with Nejire. She smiled sweetly and said, "So, tell me what you like. I want to know more about you." Izuku's face flushed, not from embarrassment, but rather from admiration for Nejire Hado's beauty. At ground level, Tamaki and Mirio noticed the two when they looked up. Mirio had a radiant smile. "They look so happy. Izuku must be a nice kid to make Nejire act like that." Tamaki grinned. Mirio laughed and said, "Yeah, he does respect boundaries." He nodded to Mirio before saying out loud, "I think he is just shy." Tamaki. Mirio laughed and gave his friend a side hug. "Think he may want to have lunch with us?" he asked. With a deadpan tone, Tamaki said, "Of course. We are the big three of UA. How would we look if we couldn't convince someone to have lunch with us?" Mirio exclaimed in shock, "Like fools, he probably wouldn't want to eat with us." "No, Tamaki. Don't sulk." Mirio was obviously struggling to get his pal to quit pouting. Nejire grinned back in the air as she overheard Izuku talk about how he enjoyed oddities and drawing. He was forced to pledge to show her his sketchbook. She had made it plain that she would release him if he didn't make a commitment. She obviously wouldn't let him leave. Not at all. As he continued talking, she thought about one thing. It was Izuku's first year. It was her third. She would make it work. They only had this year to create as many memories as they could. She would try to create as many memories as possible. Then, when it was time to say farewell. As Izuku informed her how lovely it would be to draw the city from their perspective, she noticed the pleasure on his face. When it was time to say goodbye, perhaps it wouldn't be a farewell. Perhaps she would still be with Izuku at the end of the year. Perhaps he wouldn't call her Nejire and she wouldn't call him Izuku. She would refer to him by a different name. Nejire had no qualms about acknowledging her feelings for the boy she was holding. The boy who was marveling at everything. Who wasn't afraid to express his curiosity, who was attempting to be heroic, and who publicly expressed his respect for All Might. The youngster who talked about his inadequacies as qualities that would make him a great hero and who wasn't ashamed to accept them. Someone said something. Her heart skipped a beat for some reason. Nejire ignored the voices in her head warning her that she was moving too quickly and gave Izuku a gentle kiss on the ear, leaving a tiny mark behind. Izuku gasped in amazement as Nejire held him and reassured him not to worry. Even though Mirio and Tamaki were at ground level, They were both aware of what had happened and could only react in shock. They were aware of her impetuous nature. However, they had never witnessed her behave so recklessly. Mirio's thoughts were expressed by Tamaki. Mirio nodded and was only able to respond with a serious expression when someone asked, "Love at first sight?" Tamaki nodded in response to Mirio's statement, "Yeah, but does Izuku shares it?" Both only nodded in agreement. That's the important question, right? Nejire was hoped to be knowledgeable by both pals. Nejire gave Izuku a final hug as they descended. He clutched his ear with his left hand and his face was flushed. Tamaki and Mirio advised him to hurry to class and be careful. Nejire caught the attention of 2/3 of the big three. Unexpectedly, Tamaki was the first to speak. Nejire had the grace to glance at the ground and ask, "What were you thinking? The kid looks shy and you go from 0 to 100 and nibble his ear?" Mirio forced her to look at them by placing a hand on her shoulder. Tamaki said, "We are not saying you did wrong." Ignoring Tamaki, Mirio said, "I just say that." Mirio covered Tamaki's lips with his palm to let Nejire to speak, saying, "We are just curious about what brought you to do such a thing." Mirio gave her a nod and gestured for her to continue, saying, We got a year left." Mirio remained silent and continued, saying, "In 1 year, we will stop being students, and we will be heroes. During all our years here, did you ever fall in love? Both of you know how heroism works outside. People get into relationships because they want popularity. I just want someone holding me. I just want someone nice who is there willing to hear me rambling, who doesn't mind me when I get distracted and start speaking of something else. I want someone who looks at me every day as I am the most important person in the world." Tamaki spoke while Mirio was distracted. She was not being accused by his statements. "You like the way he sees you, don't you? But more than that, you like the vibe he has, right? Because he is nice, because he sees everything with wonder." Nejire gave a nod as Tamaki spoke. "I am not justifying myself. Nibbling his ear was out of place. It just felt like it was the right thing to do." Mirio exhaled. "He looked as red as a tomato. Did he say anything that made you lose control like that?" Nejire laughed. She grinned and said, "He called me pretty. It was an accident. It didn't bother her to be labeled pretty." Tamaki was telling the truth when she said, "A lot of people call you pretty though, and a bunch more of names." She remembered a specific set of words and nodded, but her eyes were fixed on the sky rather than them. She told them about it. "You're incredible. You can view this whenever you'd like." "Oh, am I incredible? Am I also attractive? Similar to the sky?" He had accidentally said those words. She was as beautiful to him as the blue sky. She considered the sky to be among the most exquisite things in the world. She had never been referred to as pretty as the sky. Tamaki glanced at her and grinned slightly. "I lost control for a moment. I even thought I would end up making us fly higher." Looked at Tamaki and Mirio, Nejire said, "I guess it could have been worse, so what's the plan?" They were both grinning. "You mean?" she asked, clasping her hands together and waiting for them to continue talking. Mirio gave her a nod. She laughed and leapt at them, embracing them both. "Yeah. What's the next part of the plan to make Izuku and you enter a relationship?" she asked. Tamaki attempted to get out of the embrace that Mirio was reciprocating. When Tamaki nearly escaped, Mirio pulled him into an embrace and laughed, saying, "You two are the best." The other two chuckled and asked, "Can't we do this without the hugs?" Toshinori Yagi and Izuku were in the recovery girl's nurse room, laughing merrily. Izuku turned to his smartest idol when he was in a difficulty because of what had happened with Nejire Hido. All power. All Might whistled in surprise as Izuku described what had transpired. As he laughed, Izuku frantically called for assistance, saying, "I am impressed, young Midoriya. I was never that popular with the girls." He assured him that since the bite in his ear was barely larger than a pinky finger, nobody would notice it. Nevertheless, Izuku begged for his assistance, and he brought him to Recovery Girl while laughing. As he glanced at Toshinori, she chuckled, "A nibble mark? Don't you work fast? We have been in classes for 3 days and you already got a girl in love with you?" As Toshinori chuckled, Izuku nodded and remarked, "You pick a successor who is lucky with the girls. Who would have said that? I thought you said he was shy." Recovery Girl giggled as he said, "He is shy. Young Midoriya is shy. But he also seems to have gotten some of the Yagi charm." Toshinori stopped laughing and gasped as he looked at Recovery Girl, saying, "Yagi charm? Really? I thought Endeavor was the one who had kids." She laughed as she said, "Such a blow. I didn't expect that from you." With feigned hurt, Toshinori exclaimed, "I thought you would end up marrying David Shield." "Don't get David into this. He is a good friend. Did you know he is thinking of enrolling his daughter here? This intrigued her. Oh, Melissa is coming. She is such a nice girl. We should make sure Midoriya doesn't approach her. We don't need David entering a feud about Midoriya corrupting his daughter. They both giggled. Due of his extreme embarrassment, Midoriya covered his face with his hands during the entire encounter. It was too much when Recovery Girl and All Might banded together against him. The Recovery Girl informed Izuku that she had already healed his ear by giving him a pat on the arm. I didn't feel her use her quirk, he stated. She smirked and gestured for him to look in the mirror, asking, who said I used my quirk? Izuku discovered that he had an All Might pattern on his band-aid. Izuku sighed and thanked them both as he left the nurse's office. Let's be honest, kid. That nibble is the size of a nail, and it is not even worth using my quirk in it. Plus, it was a love nibble. It would be offensive to make it disappear, so you go on with it. A girl fell for you hard enough as to do that. Toshinori gave her a look. She nodded and smiled, saying, you don't think that, do you? You just like seeing him embarrassed. She chuckled, and Toshinori found himself chuckling as well. Can you blame me? Do you know how much romance goes in this school? Not enough I tell you, so whoever did that to your boy has my support and my silence too. Midoriya is a nice boy, Toshinori. I am sure whoever did that had no malice. I am even willing to say that by the size she was being as careful as she could. She grinned as she looked out the window. Young romance is such a beautiful thing, wouldn't you agree? He replied. Thinking of Izuku from yesterday made him grin. She looked at him and perked up as he said, you know, a couple of girls seemed to really like young Midoriya when we were having the joint class exercise. He laughed as he recalled, oh, let me make some tea, I want details, Toshinori, details. Reiko Yanagi and Konoko Komori were the two girls who were with him in the joint exercise. They ended up staying in the roof. She gave a happy smile. Toshinori was thinking, look at that. Getting hearts all over. Think one of them was the one who did that to his ear. Present Mike and Midnight came in, captivated by the tale Toshinori was telling, but the two were too busy talking to notice. As stated by Recovery Girl, more romance was needed at the school. Great moments cannot be afforded to be lost, but things can be replaced. Additionally, there was a moment that could not be allowed to pass at this time. Izuku was still wearing the band-aid over his ear when he walked to class. He wished that he could skip class. The first law of wishing was forgotten by Izuku Midoriya. Use caution when making wishes. There was a female who was adamant on hanging out with him. She chose to ask her pals to cover for her in class because she was so rigid in her posture. The group of girls in Monoma nodded, saying, classes are just getting started, so I doubt there will be many issues if I lose art with Midnight. Given his previous error, Monoma felt it was best to avoid any issues with Kendo and dared not tell her that it was a bad idea. Izuku Midoriya was taken aback when he saw Itsuka Kendo gesturing for him to follow her as he was making his way through the corridors to his classroom. He remained silent as she stated that. Izuku made the decision to investigate the situation. Perhaps he wouldn't mind if he arrived late because his class was English with Present Mike. Neither Itsuka nor Izuku were aware that Present Mike and Midnight were captivated by the tale All Might was telling them about how Konoko and Reiko appeared to like him. When Izuku arrived at Itsuka, she gave him a smile and opened the door to what appeared to be a gym. The open area caught him off guard. Itsuka took his hand and grinned at him. After a long period of stillness, I finally spoke. She grinned in the hopes that he would agree to the plan. Today I heard the gym would be alone. I thought since your quirk needs you getting physical that I could give you a hand training hand to hand. Despite his nervousness, Izuku nodded. He was shown a long, square mat that would serve as their ring by Itsuka. She stated the regulations for their spar as they kicked off their shoes to enter the mat. Well, rules are easy, no quirks, just hand-to-hand combat. You can kick and try to use submissions moves. We stop when one surrenders or taps out. Works for you? Izuku nodded in agreement. Itsuka grinned at him and said, I thought we were training. We are. Sparring offers you experience and it will also help me in seeing where you currently stand. Izuku gave her a nod. He noticed something prior to their fight. With a wave of her hand, she denied, smiling, did you change your ponytail? She grinned to herself, oh, no not at all, is the same as always. She didn't want to admit that she did it for him, but she did like that he noticed. Her head had to stay in the spar. Well, ready? Izuku asked with a smile as she nodded. Go. Both rushed at each other. Izuku attempted a jab but was thrown to the ground after his wrist was grasped. Itsuka maintained a smile throughout. Again, she said as he stood up and rushed forward, and she grabbed him by sweeping him. Again. The procedure continued indefinitely. It wasn't really possible for Izuku to defeat her, but in a way, Itsuka wasn't prepared for the reverse. She was aware that her extensive self-training had given her an unfair advantage. Izuku continued to rise and tried again, and she couldn't help but smile. Usually, people would declare they've had enough of losing. But Izuku simply stood there. Seeing that spirit made her grin. She made the decision to end their spar after 5 more falls. They both sat on the mat, and she was taken aback by Izuku's smile. She couldn't help but smile at his compliment. "You are amazing, Kendo. You are really an expert in hand-to-hand." She smiled as she walked up to him and said, "Thanks, but you don't need to call me Kendo. You can call me Itsuka." She made a commitment to herself that morning to move carefully, but instead she chose to follow Izuku's example and simply face the problem head-on. She smiled at him and said, "I would really like if you were to call me Itsuka, and if you allowed me to call you Izuku." She said something that astonished Izuku, and he started to look elsewhere. He simply could not understand her need for that. Observing this, Itsuka moved closer, remaining behind Izuku and pressing her back against his. She was hoping the contact would be more successful. She found herself uttering his name slowly. "Izuku." She sensed his irregular breathing. "Is a nice name. Try saying mine." She sensed his breathing. "Itsuka," she chuckled. She noticed that his respiration was less irregular than it had been. She felt his breathing becoming more normal and grinned, saying, "Come on, try again." When Izuku made touch with Itsuka's back, his cheeks flushed. He simply couldn't understand her motivation. He took a breath and spoke, his breathing steady. "Itsuka." He grinned at himself for not being nervous when he said her name. Itsuka's laughter had a strangely calming effect. As though they had known one another for longer than he realized, and nothing was wrong. Izuku was calming down, and she could sense her breathing rhythmically. "There, I want to know more about you, Izuku," she smiled. "Why?" He was beginning to unwind as he sensed Itsuka's serene breathing. "I mean, I am not that interesting." She laughed. "I beg to differ, you are more interesting than you give yourself credit. So let's start with something easy. Why did you start making sketches?" Izuku murmured. Izuku felt Itsuka's hand clasp his. "I am a late bloomer, I didn't have a quirk, so I tried to find something I was good at, in other words," he continued after sensing her comfort. The artist grinned as he recalled the time the art teacher had told him he was gifted. "My mother said I could try drawing since I always did notes on heroes and quirks. She thought it could work. I ended up being good. I kept practicing, and I even entered a competition." Itsuka's hand touched him, encouraging him to take his time. The mixture of sensations made him smile. "Did you won?" he said gently, and Itsuka noticed that his breathing had become more comfortable. She smiled. Izuka laughed and said, "Yeah, I could have gone to an art school." Instead of asking him about his quirk, Izuku was happy that she had come to her own conclusion. "But you wanted to be a hero. And you chose to try to enter UA when you got your quirk, right?" "Yeah." Itsuka finally broke the contact between their backs and got to his feet. Izuku was shocked that he never seemed anxious when Itsuka came into contact with him. His face flushed when Itsuka forced his head to rest across her lap. From his new perspective, he was examining her features. He therefore put his hands over his face to hide his blushing from her. Izuku gently removed his hands and moved them aside so he could see her face, saying, "No need to be so shy, Izuku." She was grinning. Her smile was laid back, and Izuku suddenly realized something about Itsuka Kendo. In terms of personality, she was laid back. She was clearly able to maintain her composure and didn't worry about the little things. He saw that she was grinning at his flushed face as she gently placed his hands on hers. She was simply grinning as she gazed at him. She held into his hands tightly. Izuku blushed, but he still nodded and smiled at her query, saying, "I think you are interesting. And as I said, I want to know more about you. Do you want to know more about me?" "Great." She held his hands tenderly. She talked about how she appreciated her quirk, how training felt good, and why she loved hand-to-hand fighting. Izuku found himself grinning at her determination and her objectives. "I trust my life to my hands. I know they won't fail me as long as I keep training." Izuku began to giggle lightly after noticing how delighted she appeared. As she applied a little more pressure to Izuku's hands, she giggled and said, "You know, I actually changed my ponytail." Izuku found himself grinning back at her, saying, "I just didn't want to say it because I felt it would distract me from the spar, but it made me happy you notice it." This time, when she saw his smile, she blushed slightly. Itsuka asked the question she had been pondering as they enjoyed the quiet and tranquil moment together. Izuku hesitated and then nodded, asking, "Izuku, do you like someone?" Failing to see Itsuka's slight twitch. He grinned as he recalled everyone he had met and been friends with, saying, All Might, my mom, Pony, Jiro, Yaoyorozu, Konoko, Reiko, Monoma. I also met Nejire, Mirio, and Tamaki today. I also like you. With a sigh, Itsuka Kendo let go of Izuku's hand and prodded his cheek with it. He blushed even more as she gave him a gentle grin and said, You are adorable, you know? He thought the position they were sharing was pretty personal. Itsuka gently stroked his cheek before lowering her hand to plant a kiss on his forehead. Izuku was made to change into a living tomato by using his free hand to cover the area where he was kissed. As she assisted Izuku in standing, she chuckled softly. She held the hand in captivity and never released it. Izuku was briefly a princess, and Itsuka Kendo was the brave prince. In this role, she knelt down, took Izuku's hand, and gave it a little kiss before releasing it. With a broad smile on her face, she said, I hope we can get to know each other better, Izuku. She achieved her day's objective of spending time with Izuku. Nedzu was holding the screen in his hands in the principal office, having watched everything through the security camera feed. Nedzu was obviously interested in witnessing their moment. No, you can't just leave him like that. What happened with the promise of marrying the princess? One would ask. Itsuka, meantime, noticed her group was at ease as he was cheerfully making his way to her classroom. The teacher wasn't present when she walked in. Monoma groaned as she turned to face her and asked, What happened with Midnight? She nodded before approaching Monoma and the girls and embracing them all, her hands expanding with her peculiarity. Seems she was busy, we were waiting for her but she never arrived, I guess you were lucky. As he felt the crushing pressure in his back, Monoma exclaimed, too strong, I am guessing you were happy? The girls were held more gently so they merely grinned and didn't complain. With a gentle smile, she said, Yeah, I am. The other girls burst out laughing. To avoid the anguish, Monoma was attempting to replicate Tetsu's peculiarity. When Izuku returned to his classroom, he was informed that Present Mike, their teacher, had never shown up. At the conclusion of the All Might narrative, said teachers were in a state of ecstasy. They were mortified when they realized the time. They would probably have some explanations for Nedzu and the pupils. Since Mei behaved well and didn't require the additional hour to be monitored, Izuku was ultimately led to leave earlier. Powerloader requested that Mei maintain her focus throughout the day by doing as Izuku had done the day before. Monoma stated the girls were busy, so Izuku accompanied him on the way to the station. Seeing that the child appeared to be deep in thought, Monoma inquired, So, how things went for you today? Monoma laughed and said, To be honest, I am confused. Izuku laughed, which Monoma was pleased to bring up. I understand that, after so many times falling unconscious I can say I share that. Monoma teased, Itsuka went to get you right? Did you have a good time? He realized Itsuka must have done something when he noticed Izuku's red face. Izuku's face simply turned redder as he laughed. Well, aren't you popular? At least you won't have problems finding a date for dances and stuff. Mind sharing that charm? Monoma laughed at the query. Monoma, why are girls like that? I am not sure I am the right one to answer that. For starters, I am a guy. And while I think you are nice, I am not sure what the girls see they find you irresistible. But I do know one thing. He gave Izuku a thump on the back. Don't worry about it. If girls like you, they must have a reason, and I doubt they will change. So just keep being yourself, they like you just the way you are. Izuku was feeling at ease about this. Until Monoma took off the bandage covering his ear. Izuku blurted out, What? Someone nibbled your ear? And began to run. Monoma is not far behind. Oh no. You don't, I must know if Kendo did that. Do you know how great of a teasing material that is? Get back here, Midoriya. We're friends. Friends share that kind of things. I need details, man. Monoma was certain that the quirk wasn't speed. But he really did wonder how he was able to sprint so quickly. Izuku eventually joined his train at the station without being caught by Monoma, but Monoma vowed to force him to talk about it. Toga greeted Izuku with a smile and another hug when he got home. She brought him inside and noticed the tiny nibble mark in his ear right away. Izuku. You were here earlier, she said. She gave me a cheeky smile. She pointed to her own ear and said, Oh Izuku, I didn't know you liked that kind of things. It goes without saying that he flushed and excused himself to take a bath. After seeing the green trail hurrying to the spa, Inko Midoriya turned her attention to Toga. Giggled, What did I miss? Not mentioning Izuku nibbling, she said, Nothing. Izuku just needed a bath. If she watched it herself, it would be much more hilarious. Toga bowed and saluted Inko Midoriya as though she were a soldier, saying, "Oh, all right. I am going to play a game with Mitsuki Bakugo tonight. It is not far, but you and Izuku will be alone, so please lock the doors." She grinned at her, and Inko Midoriya gave Toga a gentle pat on the cheek, saying, "I will, Inko. Don't worry," who grinned upon making contact. "You are adorable, Izuku better appreciates you." She left, blushing, and Toga interpreted that as Inko's endorsement. Toga made the decision to fulfill her commitment and prepare the film for Izuku as soon as Inko left. The aforementioned boy was reflecting on everything that had transpired while taking a bath, particularly Recovery Girls and Monoma's words. "Let's be honest, child. It isn't even worth using my quirk on that nail-sized bit. It was also a love nibble. Making it vanish would be disrespectful. You continue as a result. A girl loved you so much that she did that. Don't stress over it. I doubt the girls will change if they like you, therefore they must have a reason. They like you just as you are, so just keep being who you are." He gently touched his ear, feeling the faint impression Nejire had left there. His face flushed at this. He recalled Nejire's beauty, the way her eyes and blue hair like the sky. Itsuka's calm manner and the way she gently grasped his hands in hers helped him relax. He was accompanied in the morning by Pony, Konoko, and Reiko, all of whom wanted to spend time with him. How Yaoyorozu wanted to accompany Jiro to an art display, and how Jiro asked him to a concert. He appeared to be liked by the girls. Nejire, particularly if Recovery Girl's statements were accurate. From now on, "Izuku, you are mine," he would need to discuss it with her. He changed and had a wash before accompanying Toga to the couch for the promised movie. Izuku was thrilled that she had selected a hero movie. He was so thrilled that he was unaware of Toga's timid approach and the tight embrace that followed. "Toga?" He was taken aback by the tightness of the embrace. Izuku thought she was acting a little strangely when she said, "Himiko. You can call me Himiko. We live together, Izuku." Izuku nodded, his face flushed. "Izuku, a girl nibbled your ear, right?" Himiko Toga was deep in contemplation. Izuku was little known to her. She wanted to tell him, though. Red in the face, Izuku asked, "Did you like how that felt?" but gave a slow nod. She gave him a closer hug. Izuku looked at her and saw a strange face as he asked, "Izuku, if you were to get a girlfriend, would you forget about me?" Himiko Toga was not grinning at him as she usually did. She seems almost timid. She spoke softly and clearly with effort, asking, "If you find a girlfriend, and she likes you, and you like her back, would you leave me behind?" Izuku turned to face her and found himself giving her a hug in response, equally tight. Izuku said honestly, "Of course not. You are important to me," and as his face flushed scarlet, he heard Himiko giggle. She sank into the embrace and ran her hair over Izuku's neck. She was grinning as she simply gave him a hug, the movie losing its significance at that point. "I am important then? How important?" she asked. Himiko Toga recognized his concerns and simply sighed. "You are important, really important, like everyone around me. That's why I am confused about why so many people seem to like me." She grinned and looked directly into his eyes as she hugged him, saying, "That's an easy answer. You are you. You are special, and you make others feel special. The only thing we all want in life, Izuku, is having someone who makes us feel special. So I think I understand why girls like you. I am sure they like you the same way I do." She grinned at Izuku's shyness and said, "You make people feel special. You should let them make you feel special too. Tell me about the girl who nibbled your ear." He took a breath and began to tell her about Nejire Hido. Himiko paid close attention to the narrative and couldn't help but laugh at Izuku's account of what happened. Izuku attempted to flee when Himiko threw him onto the couch, saying, "She sounds like she is as curious as you are. Did you like the nibble because she was pretty? Or because it was personal?" Looking at Himiko, who never stopped smiling, Izuku sighed and said, "Don't run away. There is nothing wrong in you liking it, so why did you like it?" "Because, I think I was happy, because she was looking happy." Himiko laughed as she walked up to Izuku, meeting Izuku's forehead. At the end, she grinned while observing his eyes and said, "That sounds like you. Your mom told me how you always like seeing the smiles of others. How making others happy makes you happier." She was contacting foreheads with her gaze, and Izuku couldn't help but notice, however, he also saw that there appeared to be something else going on in her eyes. As though they were dancing with an emotion. Himiko continued talking while giggling. Izuku found himself talking about everyone when he said, "You make others feel special. And that makes others want to make you feel special yourself. Nejire sounds like she really likes you. Are there other girls?" As he continued talking about them, He noticed that Himiko's smile appeared to widen as she gave him a warm gaze as well. See? Everyone else is just trying to make you feel special, Izuku gasped. But, what if I am not worthy of that? Himiko asked, giggling, touching Izuku's nose. He turned scarlet in the face as she gave him a quick nose rub. She grinned, and Izuku, who was hardly able to stay aware due to his intense anxiety, said, "And who decides that? As far as I know, if a girl likes you, and you like her back, then I am sorry, Izuku. But you can't stop feelings from developing." Izuku didn't really have to respond when someone said, "You know who else has feelings for you?" Himiko did it herself. She closed her eyes, smiled, and planted a chaste kiss on Izuku's lips. "Me. You showed me kindness, you showed me you care," she said. He felt himself closing his eyes during the brief kiss, but she simply placed her head on Izuku's chest after breaking it. "Don't worry so much about who you like or who likes you, enjoy the feelings in your heart and let them grow." She hugged him with a smile. Izuku spoke, a jumble of flaming feelings. Himiko laughed and asked, "What if I like many others?" She grinned and cuddled up to him, saying, "Then you like them. I am sure the heart in your chest has too much love for one person, just promise me you won't forget me." She giggled as Izuku, in a moment of impulsiveness, found himself holding her and kissing the top of her head. "I won't," Himiko laughed while having fun with Izuku. Himiko laughed, aware that Izuku's face would undoubtedly flush red at the remark. "Then you better hope to get tons of money. A house for you and all the people you love could end up being quite big." Izuku simply clung to her. If he claimed to truly comprehend the depth of the girl's love for him, he would be lying. However, at that moment, he realized how much he liked Himiko and Nejire. If other girls asked him how he felt, he would find it difficult to describe. However, that was not the time at this moment. It was time to unwind and enjoy Himiko's soothing breathing while she slept soundly. It would be a fresh day tomorrow. Since Itsuka had invited her peers to her house, the night at the Kendo household wasn't all that different. In particular, Izuku Midoriya was liked by everybody she knew. Itsuka ignored Pony Tsunodori when she raised her hand and asked, "So, anyone has an idea?" As Konoko grinned, Pony placed her hand down and said, "An idea that is not based on a kidnapping." "What if we just told him?" Reiko asked in a straightforward manner. With a nod, Itsuka said, "He will faint." It was accurate. They required a solid strategy. To their surprise, Pony had a smart suggestion. "What if we told him one at a time? Let him go on a date with each of us, and finally telling him we are willing to share." The women were taken aback. The concept was, well, strange. However, nobody wanted to start a fight over who would eventually start dating Izuku. It was Konoko who broke the hush first. "I don't mind, I mean, we can make it work." She grinned as she walked up to Reiko and gave her a hug. Reiko hugged her back, saying, "I don't want to get into an argument with Reiko, so if she is okay with it, I am okay." Itsuka stared at the two and sighed, "I am okay with sharing him." However, there was still a noticeable smile on her face. Pony laughed as the group of females grinned. "Well, I guess I am okay with it, I don't want to be fighting anyone." She asked a crucial issue. "One question though. What are we supposed to do if other girls like him?" Itsuka gave a shrug. The three girls turned to face Itsuka and her statement. "The same as now, you know, try to convince them that sharing is caring?" They all began to laugh at her. Despite her sigh, Itsuka Kendo had a smile on her face. They would find a solution, no matter what. On the phone, Momo Yaoyorozu was engaged in a similar discussion. On the other end of the line, Kyoka Jiro asked Momo, "You like him?" She let out a sigh. She should try calling Kyoka regarding the theme with Izuku, Mina Ishido said. She left out the fact that Jiro liked him as well. From the other end of the line, she could hear Jiro moaning, "I am trying to figure it, but I believe so, yes." She said with a smile, "Momo? Can I call you Momo?" She heard Kyoka laugh and said, "Only if I can call you Kyoka." "Okay. You feel like sharing? I mean, we could try to go on dates with him. He could choose one or both, I honestly don't know. But would you be willing to try?" She was thinking. To put it mildly, the notion was outrageous. Such a relationship would never be accepted by her family. An even stronger argument for trying it. She heard laughs and said, "I am okay with the idea. Want to tell Izuku tomorrow?" "Are you kidding, Momo? He would faint. Let's just tell him in our dates. I got the Saturday and you got the Sunday, right?" She did indeed have the Sunday. Then she heard her snicker, "Kyoka, thanks." Hearing her say, "For what? I haven't done anything," made her smile. She heard the other girl snap her fingers and said, "For this, you know, including me in the idea." "That's it. You are too secluded. I believed you were the pompous rich type, no offense. But I see it now, you simply haven't gotten out much. Tomorrow you and me are getting some new clothes." She looked up from the words of Kyoka. "Is that necessary? Do you want to look like a rich girl with Izuku? Or do you want to be yourself?" She only needed to hear that. Tamaki and Nejire noticed a board with dates and plans in Mirio Tagada's home. As he spoke its words, Mirio had a helmet on his head. Tamaki held out his palm and said, "And with that, we can pretty much guarantee the relationship. Any doubts?" "Yes, Tamaki?" he asked, indicating a certain area on the board. Mirio gestured to a tiny note that said Nejire Izuku and asked, "Why are we supposed to be dressed as Cupid?" Nejire held out her hand and said, "Remember, we are working for this. Do you have any other questions?" "Yes, Nejire?" she asked, grinning and giggling. Before Mirio could say anything, Tamaki voiced his opinion. "Can we skip all the other 40 steps and jump for step 41? I can just tell him I want to date him." Nejire puffed her cheeks in rage at this. "I agree. She can just nibble the rest of his ear and mark him as hers." Mirio said, "I am not an animal marking a mate," just as Tamaki was going to chuckle. Tamaki glanced at him angrily and chuckled, "Is actually not a bad idea. Why not just mark him?" Her giggle took him by surprise. Mirio. The Big Three's war council, of course, was not as effective at night as other smaller councils. Inko returned to the Midoriya home to see a certain scene. Himiko Toga was holding her son close while he hugged her. She pulled out her phone, took a picture, then covered them with a blanket. Tomorrow, she would have to talk about certain rules. Now, though, she would simply let them sleep now. For her, seeing a girl interested in his boy was quite pleasant. Was that a mark from nibbling in his ear? A kiss and an embrace greeted the dawn of a new day. Additionally, a request was sent. Izuku fled the house before Inko Midoriya could notice the nibbling mark, saying, "Tell the girl who nibbled you that is okay." She did inquire about it with Himiko. As Inko sighed, she grinned and said, "She nibbled his ear, is adorable, is obvious it was done with a lot of care." Her boy's growth was too rapid. As he made his way to the bus station, Izuku was sighing when he was taken aback. Along with Monoma, the Class B females were waiting for him. Izuku was initially addressed by Monoma, who said, "Did something happen?" Izuku raised an eyebrow and said, "I just want to clarify I tried my best. In avoiding this, it proved to be over my ability." "Avoid what?" Pony and Konoko both kissed his cheek as soon as he was done talking. Izuku felt weak in his legs and fell backward, but Reiko and Itsuka were able to catch him in time. The outcome was instantaneous. Reiko nodded and blushed at Itsuka's cool voice. "Izuku, have you ever wanted to date many girls?" What?" groaned Monoma. Itsuka had told him the entire idea over the phone. He would do his best to assist, even though he knew they were in a hurry. As he watched Izuku flush, he laughed and said, "They all like you. Really, can you share some of that charm of yours?" When Itsuka brought up the mark in his ear, his face flushed. With a startled expression, Pony asked Izuku, "Hey, did someone bit your ear?" "Hey, I was planning on doing that." Monoma and the other girls fixed their gaze on the girl who appeared to be shameless. Along with Reiko, Itsuka assisted Izuku in standing up. Izuku wanted to say, "No, we are serious. What do you say? Feel like going in a few dates?" At that moment, he instantly recalled Himiko's comments. Enjoy the emotions in your heart and allow them to develop instead of worrying so much about who you like or who likes you. He let out a sigh. The girls' cheeks lit up as they said, I seek a try." Reiko even looked pleasantly delighted. Monoma, meantime, took cash out of his pocket and handed it to Itsuka. They had wagered that he would decline. He would try, she had wagered. Monoma let out a sigh. Monoma put a hand on Izuku's shoulder and grinned, saying, "You don't know what you just did, but I will support you." Both Pony and Konoko observed how he put his hand in the center. The eyes of Monoma opened, and he scowled at them. "Hey, girls only, don't try to steal Izuku away." Itsuka didn't feel like choking Monoma. "Hey, he is my friend, and secondly I like girls. Thank you very much." Not when she could simply embrace Izuku and ride the bus with Reiko. Monoma, Pony, and Konoko failed to board. The three of them watched the bus leave. Pony yelled, "Hey, no fair," at them. As the bus was leaving, Reiko waved to Konoko. "Reiko, how could you?" Monoma stared at Kendo and swore, "Kendo, come on, I am not part of your harem, as the bus continued. The next bus would take them there. Itsuka and Reiko were leaning beside Izuku, who was ashamed but continued to hold hands with both ladies, connecting his fingers with theirs. The contrast between touching hands with Itsuka and Reiko amused him. Reiko's grip was kind and comforting, but Itsuka's was hard. While one was telling her how much the moment meant to him, the other was helping him to remain calm. He glanced at Reiko and found himself smiling shyly. "Thank you, Izuku," recalling Himiko's counsel, mustered the courage to kiss Reiko's head as she leaned next him. The ghost-themed girl shifted, gave him a quick glance, and then planted a kiss on his cheek, leaving him in a state of emotional turmoil. When Itsuka took hold of his hand, he turned to face her. He was taken aback by her bashful expression. "I don't get a kiss?" Izuku nodded hesitantly before kissing her cheek and listening to Itsuka's laughter. The bus driver's whistling did not alleviate his worries. The goal for today was to have a long day. The meeting with the Class B girls and the bus ride with Itsuka and Reiko undoubtedly marked the beginning of a wonderful day. And now Iida was cornering him and apologizing. "I apologize. I thought you were a sort of bum. But this week I got to see in fact you decided to sit in the back so other students had more chance to learn. You already know a lot of the subjects we are seeing and that's why you sketch. You keep working your best talent. I apologize at having considering you a bum." Izuku noticed that Iida was nodding. He had no idea that Iida was considering him so seriously. He made the decision to let Iida think for himself and to make no clarifications. The other kid nodded and returned to his seat in the front, saying, "Don't worry, really, is okay." Izuku let out a sigh when Jiro and Yaoyorozu stopped by his desk. Jiro, who was seated beside him, grinned and said, "Hey, Izuku." With a smile, Izuku nodded. "Ready for Saturday?" At that concert with her, he was thrilled. She was smiling softly, which surprised him. The grin he had grown accustomed to over the course of the week wasn't her typical one. Yaoyorozu grinned and eyed Izuku. "I am glad. I promise we will have an awesome time," he said. "Then I will be seeing you on Sunday." Todoroki and Bakugo were both perplexed by her statement. Izuku appeared to be well liked by the girls. Bakugo couldn't find anything that made Izuku seem like a good fit for anything out of a sandbag, which left him completely perplexed. Izuku was taken aback by the subsequent events, something that even Kyoka was taken aback at. Momo simply proceeded to give Izuku a cheek kiss. Kyoka simply grinned and said, "Can't wait." She enjoyed seeing Momo's more wild side, like that of a rock star. It was turning out to be a good day. Izuku's lunch break was interrupted when Nejire showed there and took him away right away. She led him back to where he had been yesterday. She smiled, but her eyes were fixed on the floor. Izuku's hand on her shoulder startled her, and she said, "Izuku, I am sorry about yesterday. I ruined what probably was a special moment." Nejire's eyes were bright as she gazed at Izuku. I don't mind it. Someone told me that what you did simply means you were really serious about liking me," she said. Mirio and Tamaki were startled in the darkness. Even present Mike and Midnight were viewing the action from their own hiding place, but they couldn't see it from their perspective. They made the decision to witness Izuku charm for themselves after hearing about it from All Might. They had not yet experienced any disappointment. They looked for further improvement. She spoke quickly and nervously, briefly falling outside of the top 3. "So, you don't mind it? At all? You are not angry? Or want to avoid me?" she asked. She was merely a girl who had a crush on him. Izuku smiled and said, I don't." And that smile was all Nejire needed to run over and give him a firm hug. She began to laugh the entire time. She twirled while holding him, surprising Izuku. She didn't show how strong she was. Mirio and Tamaki both grimaced as they watched the girl being carried to bite Izuku's ear once more. "That's great. That means I can do this," Tamaki said at that moment. Mirio laughed and remarked, "Didn't she say she wasn't an animal?" Mirio pointed to present Mike's head peeking out from a corner to observe the action, saying, "I guess love takes out that wild side of hers. Hey, isn't that present Mike?" Nejire, meantime, quietly completed the task she began the previous day. She brought Izuku to her and gave him a direct kiss on the lips after she had reapplied the mark on his ear. Izuku fainted, his eyes opening in surprise due to the emotional overload. This time, when they saw the female simply hurrying for the kiss, Midnight and present Mike flushed. Midnight said, "That's not respecting the steps in the ladder of love," and silenced Mike. "Don't scream. And screw the steps, this is awesome." Aizawa walked up beside Mike and Midnight, but neither of them noticed. He sat down next them and watched as Nejire kissed Izuku, saying, This is what you do at lunch? Spying a student? And not telling me about it? She saw that he fainted after she let him go. She kept him from falling by holding him. As she embraced him, she laughed and exclaimed, I am keeping you, Izuku. I am definitely keeping you. Present Mike, Tamaki, Midnight, and Mirio were only able to sigh at the female. Aizawa was simply taken aback. More girls were interested in Izuku than All Might realized. The other two professors grinned at the thought of having fun with it. We got to tell this to All Might. Meanwhile, Nedzu sighed as he watched the situation from his office. That was beautiful and all, but I prefer the interaction between Izuku and Itsuka, maybe. The headmaster of the hero school had a sinister scheme in his mind. Nejire gave Izuku a firm hug as his class day came to a conclusion and asked him out on a date the following week. He found himself kissing his face and nodded. The group of females from Class B also gave him hugs as they left the school. He was genuinely unsure of how many embraces he could take. On the other hand, there was warmth in every hug. He was suddenly accompanied by a new person on his way to the station. When the Class B girls mentioned that they would need to stay behind for anything, Monoma promised to ensure that nothing happened. Jiro claimed they were planning a surprise for Yaoyorozu, so they went on their own excursion together. He was obviously a little uneasy about it. Thus, he was taken aback when he was strolling alongside Tsuyu Asui, one of his classmates. The aforementioned girl, who had large eyes and long, dark green hair, possessed a quirk that gave her various frog-like powers. As they strolled along, she gave him a perceptive look. Izuku was apprehensive and a little bashful when she gazed at him. She walked for a few minutes before speaking. She grinned at him, and Izuku found himself blinking. I am not sure why Jiro and Yaoyorozu seem to want to know you. But I can see you are obviously nice. She was really direct. The girl bowed and continued to gaze at him, saying, Oh, thanks Asui. The girl's direct remarks made Izuku flush. You know, you are quite cute. Too shy, which makes you an obvious target for teasing and bullying, right? He asked. He continued to nod in response to her query. As they continued to walk, she appeared to smile at him and said, Well, don't worry, Izuku. I won't be teasing you. They had to wait while the tedious journey to the station came to an end because Mountain Lady had created a mess that other heroes were cleaning up. Asui's words were, she probably tried to show off again. Asui nodded, which shocked Izuku, who grinned at her and said, she probably tried her best in the beginning. Obviously, but she is always flaunting herself. Izuku had to grudgingly concur. Izuku was taken aback by the direct question, Do you think she is cute? When Asui sought to hide her expressions, it was difficult to read them. Asui nodded and said, she is cute. Izuku gave her a startled look and continued, If you said you didn't find her cute, I wouldn't have believed in you. Asui chuckled and asked, what happened with the no teasing? Izuku found himself laughing with her this time. I am not teasing you. I am being honest, Midoriya. The girl was so direct and honest that it was difficult not to. He found it quite refreshing. He flushed when Asui said, you got a nice laugh, Midoriya. You should laugh more. Then she nodded, thanks. For a brief moment, she sounded happier as she said, You are welcome, Midoriya. Asui's directness made Izuku smile, and he hoped they would become close friends. Izuku Midoriya attended a lesson at home about the dangers of ear injuries and the associated health problems. Himiko Toga was constantly laughing as she heard Inko discuss the several dangers, and she frequently asked herself if she would bite her neck or shoulders. Izuku Midoriya obviously didn't get much sleep that day. In the presence of Kyoka Jiro, Momo Yaoyorozu was evaluating the clothing she had purchased. She purchased simple-looking clothing, including pants, a black belt with metal accents, a band logo shirt, and more ornate and simpler shirts. Some were truly her style, while others were suggestions from Kyoka. Thinking of what she had told her made her grin. Make yourself the person you wish to be. Izuku is the type of guy that will like you for who you are, so don't strive to be what your family wants you to be. Why don't you go introduce him to Momo Yaoyorozu? In order for Kyoka to enjoy her date, she sincerely wished that Sunday would arrive sooner rather than later. Kyoka Jiro could hear her father talking to her once more. Her mother laughed and gave her dad a hug. So, don't go asking for alcohol, you are a minor. No drugs, rock and roll is not all alcohol and drugs, okay? She said. Dear, I am sure Kyoka can take care of herself, is not her first concert, is just the first one with a boy, her father said. She nodded in response to her mother's remark, I know, so all said Kyoka. Although she felt a little anxious, she was certain that everything would work out. She gulped. She knew her mother wasn't kidding when she said, "Oh, and don't forget it, Kyoka. In 1 month you have to bring the boy to eat with us. Otherwise you are paying the tickets. It would be good tomorrow." In the meantime, Nedzu attended an afternoon meeting with the teachers. Only the instructors remained on the school premises, and Nedzu was filling out a ton of paperwork while he spoke to them. The teachers nodded in agreement, but Eraserhead, Present Mike, and Midnight had different ideas. "Well, I have come to believe our classes have come to get a sense of competition that is not all that healthy. I believe we all saw it in the past and is coming back again. Therefore, I have come to develop a plan for Class A and B to work together more often to develop a sense of camaraderie. They are all students, and they should not be jealous of one another." Instead of the other two, Aizawa spoke. The other teachers were perplexed when the teacher said, "I think we all agree, but I wanted to know if we could include the top 3 of UA into this idea." However, Recovery Girl and Toshinori Yagi were speculating as to why Aizawa spoke. Even though others were unaware of it, they were aware that those 3 were sly. Aizawa nodded in response to Nedzu's query. "Oh, is there a reason you believe that would be good?" The big 3 are more relaxed in the sense of classes than the first and second years, but they also have stress at certain incoming decisions. I believe giving them the chance to spend more time with the first years would help them relax from the thoughts of their incoming future outside of the school. Their mind needs as much rest as their body. Recovery Girl was smirking at Aizawa. Naturally, that would provide a strong case for why it is just as important to take care of their mental health as their physical health. However, this also caused her to question if Nejire was among the top 3 UA pupils. The girl who nibbled Izuku's ear. With the first one having made it apparent that she was interested in the younger kid, the 3 heroes had not yet informed their Toshinori about the developing romance between Nejire and Izuku. Without wasting any time, a woman delivered further papers for Nedzu to complete. "Your words hold value, Aizawa. I shall approve it." As he continued to fill out the paperwork, the headmaster gave himself a nod. "Well then, as part of this new program for camaraderie between students, I believe we should add some activities of cultural value." Nedzu cracked a grin. The actual conflict would begin here. The battlefield was currently under construction. Even while today's choices may be reversed, they would still have an impact on the future and could jeopardize his intentions for the princess and prince pair. He was in the docks with his ship. He would have to get the wind to work in his favor if he wanted it to sail. Aizawa's statements actually worked in Nedzu's favor. "I was thinking they could go with us to the exercise of the rescue training. It would do well for them to be in groups, and it would also help them see more experimented students doing rescue." Present Mike, however, gave him what he desired. "We could make them do a play. The theater has always been a good way for people to work together. We could even bring the support courses and others interested in working together for it." Other instructors nodded in agreement. Nedzu was forced to write a tiny bonus to present Mike in the documentation pertaining to the schoolteacher's paycheck. He offered the suggestion, so nobody would think that he was preparing to do it. The best pawn was the one who was unaware that he was a pawn. "Oh, that would work perfectly. I could get some students to work in making backgrounds and scenery for the play. Some have some real talent in art." Midnight was sounding excited. Nedzu gave a nod. One thing in particular he forgot. Izuku Midoriya was a creative person. He had to make sure he was in the play. But he didn't have to fear because of Toshinori Yagi was present. "We could even make students participate in all parts of the process, so they can meet others and work together. By making them share their own experience with others from other fields, they will end up learning more. By mixing the support course with the hero course, and reserve too, we can make sure everyone develops a good sense of teamwork." Everyone in the classroom nodded to the pure joy of the suggestion. Nedzu found himself expressing gratitude. All Might was Toshinori Yagi, even when he wasn't flexing his muscles. In addition, he was a hero, the greatest hero. Nedzu grinned and continued filling out the paperwork, saying, "I agree, Toshinori." The teachers nodded as they said, "I would dare say we are having an efficient meeting." Every one of them has a secret agenda. No one larger than Nedzu, though. At all costs, he wanted to witness the performance with Prince Itsuka and Princess Izuku. When Saturday arrived, Kyoka grinned. She got up early, took a bath early, and changed into jeans and a black top. She was teased by her mother for straightening her hair too much. She defended the fact that she always thought her style looked beautiful. She might say that all she wanted, according to her mother, but in reality, she was attempting to win Izuku over. She had prepared ahead of time. She was now recording the noises she was able to generate while playing a guitar in her room. Appreciating her guitar's rhythmic tones, she was relaxing and swaying. When her parents heard their daughter creating music, They couldn't help but smile. You could tell Kyoka's mood by listening to her music. She was excited when the beat moved too quickly, then annoyed and tried to calm down when it followed a certain cadence as though she was practicing. But when she was joyful, her music was at its best. Her music was fantastic at the moment. Hearing her daughter play the guitar made Kyoka's mother smile. "Our daughter is growing, isn't she?" she asked. Her spouse gave a nod. He grinned even as he answered, "Yeah. A bit too fast for my liking, but yeah." Given that Kyoka was the one inviting him, both parents were now more interested in the boy who could make their daughter so pleased at the prospect of attending a concert with him. In any event, they were eager to meet the boy. In the meantime, Himiko was giggling and begging Izuku to calm down. She stood up and gave him a back hug while giggling, saying, "Just relax. You look handsome enough." Izuku was dressed casually in a shirt and jeans. She taunted him by running her fingers through his hair, which was as wild as ever. She gave him a deep hug and then let him go, grinning. She smiled at him as she stepped in front of him and said, "Just relax, I promise nothing bad will happen." As she complimented him, Izuku found himself flushing and grinning back at her. Himiko Toga was many things. If Kyoka is as nice as you say, I am sure she will be sure to make sure you have an awesome time. One of them was also perceptive. She therefore knew that nothing negative would occur based on what she had heard from Izuku. Himiko smiled at Izuku and gestured for him to answer the phone when it rang. Himiko nodded enthusiastically at him and said, "Hey, sorry Izuku, my parents wanted to know if we could get you earlier." Izuku felt uneasy since she referred to him as Izuku rather than Midoriya. He had captured her heart. However, she also desired for him to feel the love of several people. Thus, incidents like this simply served to confirm to her how unique Izuku was. "Oh, sure. I am ready." He heard Kyoka Jiro smirk. "Great. We should be getting there soon." Izuku was unaware that she would have made the trip to pick him up whether or not he had given his consent. Shortly after the call ended, Inko Midoriya was meeting Mika and Kyotoku, the Kyoka parents. The first had long blonde hair, and the second wore spectacles and had the same color hairstyle as Kyoka. Mika donned a blouse and skirt, which gave her a more polished appearance, whereas both parents looked rather casual. However, if the two parents had one thing in common, it was that they were having fun meeting Inko. He said to her, "Ah, such a nice lady. Thanks ma'am." Mika nodded in agreement. Both of them were rapidly growing fond to Inko Midoriya and her generosity. Himiko was laughing while talking to Kyoka in the living room. Himiko swiftly revealed her friendship with Izuku. She said, "So you like him?" And the girls simply nodded and smiled. Kyoka said, "Yes, I do love Izuku," as she grinned at the girl. Himiko laughed and chose not to tell Kyoka about the girls Izuku had previously mentioned. "Hey, what's one more? Welcome to the love boat of Izuku, I guess." When she discovered it herself, it would be more hilarious. "So, you like Izuku? Really do?" Himiko asked, only to make sure the girl's feelings were sincere. Izuku already struggled with his own emotions. Having a female who wasn't sure make him second-guess himself wouldn't help. Kyoka let out a sigh. "I guess I do. I just want to know more about him, and I like the idea of knowing he thinks of me, you know." Himiko gave a nod. She was well aware of the want to find out what Izuku thought of her. Himiko grinned at Kyoka, who found herself grinning back at the free-spirited girl. "I do. I am sure all will go well with him." She admired her. She grinned as Himiko grinned back at her, saying, "You are really going to like Momo." Izuku emerged from his room and strolled down as they were wrapping up their little conversation, and Kyotoku saw him right once. Additionally, he noticed that he was carrying a piece of paper. "Hey, boy." The man waved at him, and Izuku waved back out of reflex when he saw what was on the sheet of paper, albeit timidly. It was an illustration of Kyoka's entire physique in the school uniform. He was shocked to see that it was a drawing, but he would have mistaken it for a picture if there hadn't been any color. Mika observed the drawing as well, observing her husband's appearance. Inko merely gave them a smile. She smiled and continued, "Izuku is quite talented in art. I wanted him to study something related to that, but he chose to try to be a hero." She wasn't particularly upset about her boy's choices. When Izuku timidly presented her the sketch, Kyoka saw. It read a short sentence in the corner. "From Izuku Midoriya, for Kyoka Jiro, continue to rock." He should write it, Himiko had suggested in the last section. However, judging by Kyoka's smile and little flush upon receiving the drawing, it had been the right choice. "Thanks," she said with a smile as she held the draw with such tenderness and significance. It had been done with her in mind. She also had a stunning appearance. Only his daughter's slight blush when she thanked the boy was visible to Kyotoku. He made up his mind then and there. He glanced at his spouse, using their eyes alone to communicate for a little moment. Did you see that? Did you witness her response? When was the last time you saw her blush like that? We have to get him. I saw it. Inko probably wouldn't want an arranged marriage, so perhaps we should let their relationship develop organically. Yes, I would prefer it if you let my son do things on his own. They were obliged to turn to face the smiling and nodding Inko Midoriya as they heard the third voice in their conversation, proving that she did notice everything they considered. A psychic was not Inko Midoriya. She was aware, however, when her son was on people's minds. Before the concert, Kyoka and Inko's parents decided it would be acceptable for Izuku to stay at the Jiro family's house for a while. In this manner, Izuku found himself in a chamber. By themselves. Alongside Kyoka. A female. He was obviously anxious. Kyoka's room was filled with band posters and equipment. Her bed was the only space devoid of musical instruments or other items. Where he was seated, when he recalled that fact, his nerves simply made him flush. Fortunately, or unfortunately, depending on who you ask, Kyoka brought 2 glasses of water into her room. Izuku nodded and sat next to him, offering him a glass, which he immediately drained, making her chuckle. Sorry there, we didn't have tea. She grinned when he shook his head and said, Chill Izuku, hey, you ever played an instrument before? Perhaps she simply learned something that would help them connect. Perhaps it would work because the concert was still a long way off. She got out of bed and grabbed a guitar. One of her favorite guitars was a single cutaway model with a reddish-brown tint and a clearer center. It was both beautiful and useful. She presented it to Izuku, who took it with care. She sat next to him and helped him hold it correctly. Then she brought her guitar of choice. The instrument was similar, but it was metallic plum, like her hair. She brought a chair in front of the bed and sat in front of Izuku, grinning. Seeing how anxious he was, she grinned and said, Okay, you are going to learn how to play the guitar. She laughed as he remained motionless under the fictitious threat. Don't worry, the guitar isn't going to bite. I might thought if you don't stop being so nervous. She continued by going over the fundamental notes and demonstrating to him the proper hand postures for an easier experience. Now, focus on my hands, see where they are, and where my fingers are touching, okay? She asked. She noticed that Izuku had a gorgeous face instead of being charming when he was truly focusing and not blushing and acting like a frightened mass of emotions. She checked to make sure Izuku was doing as she had instructed, fighting the need to blush. Time is said to operate in mysterious ways. That only a minute has gone by when you think an hour has. And sometimes hours have passed when you think seconds are passing. Time has a mysterious way of working. As she continued to teach Izuku the fundamentals of playing the guitar, Kyoka Jiro was unaware of the passing of the hours. While they were playing, she was joking with him that perhaps he would be fantastic if he concentrated on practice with her. If her parents hadn't knocked on her door and reminded her about the concert, she actually wouldn't have noticed. She was somewhat taken aback by how pleasant it had been to simply spend the time practicing with Izuku. She could have avoided her parents' argument about asking Izuku to dinner if she had given it some thought beforehand. There was no other option now. She didn't mind, though, because she had liked their time together and thought the concert would be better now. Izuku found himself unwinding and relishing the time they spent practicing together, even though Kyoka was unaware of it. In fact, he was thinking about attempting to practice more. When Jiro's parents dropped them off at the performance, Jiro wasted no time in showing Izuku where they were. It goes without saying that Izuku was astounded by the sheer number of people in the venue. When Kyoka took him to the very front in a private space, he was even more impressed. As they arrived at their locations, she grinned at him and asked, Ever wanted to be a VIP, Izuku? All in all, Izuku was witnessing a world he had never seen before as he glanced everywhere and saw the lights and the people preparing and yelling for the group to emerge. He also had to acknowledge that it suited Kyoka Jiro's character. Loud, powerful, self-assured, and amazing. In a few words, that was Kyoka Jiro. She blushed when she saw that Izuku was giving her a little smile. Izuku was startled out of his reverie by the inquiry, What, do I got something in my face? He waved his hand in denial, but before he could respond, the public's cries announced that the band was about to perform. The group's main guitarist wore clothing that appeared to have a ring of fire on it. We are the Rolling Fires. Are you ready, people of Musutafu? He said. While holding her jacks in place, Kyoka found herself yelling along with the crowd as he talked. She enjoyed concerts but detested loud noises. She wore a special covering that her mother had given her for these kinds of situations in order to prevent the overcharge in her hearing. That way, she wouldn't have to worry about the discomfort to hear. Even Izuku found himself yelling in accord with Kyoka's positive outlook and enthusiasm. Then what are we waiting? Let's roll. They initiated, gesturing to their drummer. Izuku became fascinated by the group's use of fire-related eccentricities to create a spectacle behind them in addition to their instruments playing a rock and roll sound. The group members' flames appeared to merge into a circle that began to spin, giving the appearance of a sun. Izuku was mesmerized by the group's utilization of their eccentricities as well as their music as their flames danced to the rhythm of their songs. The person standing next to her was displaying excitement about the entire event, which captivated Kyoka as well, although not the music itself. Kyoka couldn't help but stare into Izuku's eyes since they were so full of energy. Izuku found himself exclaiming, "This is amazing," and Kyoka agreed. They both remarked, "It is amazing," however, their perceptions differed. Izuku's debut performance, and Kyoka was dating someone she wished to express herself with more frequently. Nothing would please her more than to force that look to be on his face each and every day for the rest of their lives. And she knew it with those thoughts. She had a serious crush on Izuku Midoriya. Could she, however, win his heart? The lead guitarist grinned at everyone as he clutched his guitar once more as the song briefly came to an end with the final drumming sound. With a predetermined song in mind, the crowd agreed, saying, "Thanks, Musutafu. Now, what do you say we play a slow one for the couples? Then let's go. This is it, you already know this one, what you do is like music to my heart." Izuku cheered despite not understanding why it was happening as people screamed at the band. Kyoka understood why. One of the Rolling Fires songs was a love ballad, and the band had been around for a while. As the band began their song, the crowd roared. The flames that had produced so many effects suddenly took the form of two shadows, a girl and a boy, who were slowly dancing together as the song continued. As the music continued, Kyoka Jiro continued to stare at Izuku. She was staring at him, but he was lost in the music and the dancing silhouettes. It's often said that music is about letting go. For others, it's all about expressing their emotions. Jiro was all about expressing your ideas and views, according to Kyoka. In order to get Izuku to stop staring at the silhouettes and instead focus on the smiling Kyoka who was holding his face affectionately, she slowly walked up to him and held his face. Her cheeks were flushed, and she was grinning broadly. She let herself go with the music and gave him what she wanted by slowly bringing his face to her and kissing him on the lips. The gentle lyrics, which echoed behind Kyoka as she kissed Izuku Midoriya, said, "I have been waiting so long for this moment, what you do is like music, to my heart." Who, to her surprise, was returning the kiss. She discovered happiness. Izuku was like music to her right now. The red-faced teenagers were waiting for Kyoka's parents to come get them after the concert. They were seated next to one another on a bench at a bus stop near the performance location. All they did was wait. Despite what transpired during the performance, Kyoka held Izuku's hand and avoided looking at him. Kyoka purchased a group shirt for Izuku, who was holding it, and they were even able to have the group members sign it. He was blushing while holding Kyoka's hand in his free hand. He had been surprised by what had transpired at the event. He kissed her back in a way he didn't know why. He simply knew he had no regrets, however, he was not really sure why Kyoka had kissed him. Before blushing once more, they exchanged glances while attempting to communicate simultaneously. Kyoka blushed and grinned at Izuku as he replied cautiously, "Why you should go first." She grinned at him, making him blush even more. "You already kissed me. No need to be so shy, I liked it." Kyoka Jiro dedicated her life pursuing her goals and putting up a strong fight to achieve them. She simply kissed Izuku when she felt like it. She did what she wanted to do, show him love. It was good that he kissed her to express that he liked her. She blushed when she noticed his amazement. "So, I hope you don't mind. I got zero experience kissing Izuku. You were my first kiss," she said. He denied right away, and she grinned and said, "What surprises you? Thought I would go around kissing people everywhere." Kyoka Jiro had never blushed so deeply as she did when she heard Izuku declare her lovely. "No, it's just why you are really beautiful, so I am surprised." A discovery was met with an accusing finger. Thanks, hey," she said. "You didn't say it was your first kiss. Who kissed you before?" Izuku whispered the name, blushing as he did so. "Nejire." At this, Kyoka arched an eyebrow. Izuku, who was flushed, cocked an eyebrow at this, saying, "Wait, so is not just me and Momo." "Momo? Yaoyorozu? What does she have to do with this?" Kyoka's smirk reappeared as she approached Izuku and gave him a side hug while prodding his cheek with her ear studs. When she explained it to him, her smirk turned into a nervous smile as she blushed. Man, you are dense. Momo also likes you, and I don't mean the friends like, I mean like as in the way I just did, you know, the kissing. He also saw that he was flushed. He knew what she meant. And Kyoka pressed a finger to his lips before he could say anything. She remained silent for a moment, her finger still in Izuku's lips, and she looked down the entire time she spoke. No, I know what you were thinking, the whole you were not special or that you were boring. If you were boring I wouldn't have agreed with my parents to get the tickets. If you weren't interesting, I wouldn't have let you in my room, or to play one of my favorite guitars. If you weren't someone I liked, I wouldn't have kissed you at the concert. Izuku couldn't help but notice the joy in his eyes as she stared at them now. Izuku Midoriya. My wish is to want to stay next to you. The feelings you make me feel when I look at you sketching, practicing something new, when I see you doing your best in class, if all of that is wrong. I don't want to be right. I just want to keep seeing you. I want you to keep seeing me with the eyes you had when we're practicing. She smiled as usual and blushed in place as well as her trust. She grinned at him and said, I just want to fall in love with you every day. When her finger left his lip, she was unaware of it. Additionally, she took both of his hands in hers, she was indifferent. All she needed was to see Izuku grin slightly and nod in agreement with what she had said. Once more, her ear jacks prodded Izuku. She laughed as she saw Izuku's blush and said, I am not going to stop teasing you though. I like that of you. It was even more satisfying to hear him say that he also liked her. Kyoka requested the Jiro family whether they might return to their own house before dropping Izuku off at his house. It would only be a second, she said. She returned to her chamber. She promptly picked up the guitar case that Izuku had played with her. She obtained an instruction booklet and placed it in the guitar box along with a few additional strings. She quickly jotted out a message and then added it as well. It goes without saying that after a concert, Kyoka's parent briefly experienced a crisis upon witnessing her daughter with a case. Did she make the decision to go away with Inko Midoriya's boy? As a group of musicians who were also heroes, would they wander the streets? His little kid was growing up too quickly. His concerns subsided when he realized the case was of a guitar. He was unsure of the reason for her pulling out the guitar, but whatever. She and the boy weren't fleeing together. Okay, we're set, she said with a smile while constantly glancing at Izuku. Kyotoku was still concerned, of course. Kyoka didn't enjoy the speed at which they drove back home. She took the guitar case with her when she exited the vehicle. Before giving Izuku the case, she gave him a hug. What? She offered it to him with a smile. When she got the case from Kyoka, she winked at Izuku, making him blush, saying, practice. And think of me as you do. He saw the guitar he used for practice as he opened it. Kyotoku was shocked that Kyoka had given up one of her instruments. Maki just thought it was a clever move on the part of her daughter to keep the boy thinking about her. She grinned and nodded at him, saying, but as one of your favorites, you said it too. He nodded, and she gently put a palm on his cheek. Indeed, is one of my favorites. You remember my favorite one, right? She said. As she approached him, she grinned and said, I want you to think of me, and I believe you have a talent, you need to practice. Kyoka Jiru's romantic thoughts were interrupted by the car's honk. Plus, if you keep practicing, who knows? Maybe we can be a duet. Kyoka Jiru. You are too young to be planning a romantic escapade, is a statement that undoubtedly made both teenagers blush. Kyoka gave Izuku a quick peck on the cheek and climbed back into the car. As the car faded and she was unable to look at him, she continued to wave at him outside the window. To remind her kid to return to the house, Inko Midoriya had to prod him in the side. Upon entering, Izuku opened the case completely and found himself staring at the instrument. He discovered a booklet with tuning and maintenance instructions for the guitar. In addition, he noticed a small letter on the side, which he took and read. Midoriya Izuku. If it wasn't apparent, I like you. I'll give you my Les Paul Gibson. It's an amazing guitar, even though I am aware that you don't know much about music yet. Just as amazing as you. As you rehearse and go over what we did today, keep me in mind. Midoriya Izuku. I mean it. Take responsibility, I like you. I will always and forever love you. Jiro Kyoka. Izuku blushed reading the note, but he eventually smiled when he saw the little drawing of Kyoka's face. She had clearly been working on that specific doodle. He took the note carefully and replaced it in the guitar's case. Never would he lose it. Additionally, he would practice his guitar in the same manner that he did his sketching. It had been a loving present, and he was not going to waste it. Kyotoku stared at Kyoka back home. Kyoka was just grinning as she made her way to her room. "So, your Les Paul? That's one pretty expensive thing to throw away, you know?" she asked. Kyotoku was taken aback when Maki went by him and put a hand on his shoulder. "I actually gave her the commemorative version. I am sure I paid for wedding ring, a suit, and a dress." She grinned at the man she had fallen in love with, saying, "She is in love. And judging from the expression of the boy, he is also in love with her." Kyotoku nodded and groaned. The woman grinned, patted his cheek, and left, asking, "To be young why you didn't give me a Les Paul, Maki?" Not even acknowledging the question or providing a response. Kyotoku exclaimed, so cold, at his wife's antics. However, he loved her for who she was. Saturday was over. Love was shared, and a girl with a rock and roll rebellious spirit had spoken out about her true sentiments fearlessly. The sun, stars, and moon were no longer visible in the sky. A girl in a different part of the city was now debating what clothing to wear. Momo Yaoyorozu and Izuku Midoriya went on a date on a Sunday. She wanted to know how to style her hair or what to dress, and she recalled Kyoka's remarks while she was in the midst of her emotional disaster. "Be authentic." As she went to choose up her outfit, she grinned. Izuku Midoriya was merely playing the guitar's foundation when Himiko was clapping at him in the Midoriya family's home. I am not doing anything impressing." This girl's compliment made him flush. Himiko Toga was Izuku's biggest admirer. "You're kidding? You haven't touched a guitar. And now you can play basic things." I would call that worthy of praise of Izuku. In heroics, music, or sketches, she would be a fan forever. For she wasn't just a fan. She was a girl who had a deep and abiding affection for Izuku. Inko Midoriya took notice of this fact and began to really consider if she would have to purchase a lock for Izuku's door. She didn't think Himiko would go to her son's room in the middle of the night to cuddle. But she had to be certain. Izuku had kept his word to Kyoka, and he began going over everything they had done the day before in the morning. Izuku was adorable while rehearsing, according to Himiko and Inko. He was dressed casually for the occasion. A comfortable white shirt and black jeans. However, his mother insisted that he change, so he ended up wearing black formal pants and a black button-up shirt. She also brought him a red jacket, stating that he should wear formal attire if he was going to an art gallery with Yaoyorozu. Ironically, she informed him that he would not be attending a performance this time. He appeared poised and prepared. The girl gazing at herself in the mirror could be compared to this. In contrast to her wine-colored dress pants, she donned a black cloth belt and a wine-colored jacket over a white button-up shirt. Overall, Yaoyorozu looked stunning and had the air of a man escorting a female to a dance with her hair styled in her typical ponytail. Reality wasn't far away. The Midoriya family was taken aback to see a limousine leave their house as the morning went by rather swiftly. Inko Midoriya was momentarily perplexed as Yaoyorozu emerged gracefully from the vehicle, grinning. It appeared that the girl who was waiting outside had come to take Izuku away. Inko Midoriya's thoughts abruptly took a Victorian turn. "This is to ask for your son's hand in marriage, only with your consent." "Oh, and why should I allow you to take Yaoyorozu, my kid, away? Even if I come from a wealthy family, don't think my wishes for Izuku are pointless. I adore him." Yaoyorozu was inside bringing Inko thoughts back to reality. Himiko informed her. The girl smiled as she passed in front of her. Inko Midoriya was perplexed, but she managed to conceal it effectively with a warm grin and a nod to Yaoyorozu. "Greetings, I have come to pick up Izuku. The art exhibition will start soon, and that way we can even get lunch later, if you are okay with it." Midoriya Inko was perplexed. Yaoyorozu Momo was a female. It was a boy, Izuku Midoriya. What made her believe that this was all a Victorian drama, with her boy playing the role of the girl who fell in love with the wealthy person who had fallen for her? Izuku had just left his room and was putting the instrument back in its case when he saw Yaoyorozu's expression. He blushed when the female smiled at him. She couldn't help but notice how adorable he was. Today, she had resolved to give it her all. Kyoka had encouraged her, advising her to try to enjoy her time with Izuku and to be herself. As she walked to Izuku, keeping those ideas in mind, she excused herself from Inko and smiled as she undid his crimson tie. She quietly smiled at Izuku, scarcely concealing her growing enthusiasm at the opportunity to spend time with him today. "Let me help you with that." Both Inko and Himiko observed how Yaoyorozu carefully and precisely untied the tie and fitted it for Izuku to wear. The entire time, the child was flushed. Inko, who was watching one of her dramas live, started blushing as well as she saw the scenario. It was the girl's gentlemanly charm that impressed Himiko Toga. It was clear that she had grown up in a formal setting. Izuku's constant flushing didn't help his mother see him any differently than the female he was romanticizing with the man of higher social status who had fallen in love with a lowly girl. Momo grinned at Izuku after completing the tie. A slight flush began to appear on her cheeks. "You look great, Izuku." She gave him a gentle peck on the cheek, causing Himiko and Inko to gasp in shock at the drama that was developing. Izuku bowed hesitantly and clasped his arm, asking, "Shall we go?" Momo glanced at Inko again as they strolled. She nodded and admonished them to leave, saying, "I will make sure to bring him back. I promise it won't be too late." Himiko and Inko both gasped as they were leaving and exchanged glances while conversing simultaneously. They were amazed by what they saw and said, "Did you see that?" Momo was sitting next to Izuku in the limousine, with hardly any space between them, and she was grinning at him. Startlingly, Izuku was the first to speak. Thank you for inviting me, Yaoyorozu." The girl grinned and nodded her head. He blushed slightly and grinned at her, saying, "Momo. You can call me Momo, and I will keep calling you Izuku if you don't mind." She discovered that she liked the way Izuku said her name. "Okay, Momo. Not too quickly. Not too sluggish." In a symphony that was ideal for her, it simply flowed from his mouth. It was a strange thing. "Love. I think you look great." Izuku's compliment caused her to nod and wear a smile. Izuku blinked when he said, "Thank you. I wanted to impress you actually." His class's top oddity assessment scorer wanted to make an impression on him. Isn't it supposed to be the opposite? His compliment made her smile. "Oh, you already impressed me, Momo. Why, you did great in our class." "Thanks, but if you ask me, you are the impressing one. You got an incredible quirk. You have talents outside of being a hero too. Others focus too much into that and don't do much more. Or worse, they end up with egos the size of Bakugo." This observation caused Izuku to giggle when she stated it. Nobody else in the world, Izuku thought, had an ego as big as Bakugo's. Katsuki Bakugo and Shoto Todoroki sensed that someone was talking about them somewhere else. Momo grinned as she made Izuku giggle, feeling a pleasant rush throughout her body. The boy was not very funny, and in her opinion, it was a huge advantage that she made him laugh. She had meticulously planned their excursion. Kyoka broke the plan, which said that as long as she made a sincere effort to enjoy herself with Izuku, everything would work out, and she was determined to do just that. The remainder of the voyage was filled with insightful remarks on her peculiarity and other people's methods of operation. Momo appreciated that Izuku shared her intelligence by being able to discuss subjects she didn't often get the opportunity to discuss. However, she was completely blank in the art gallery. They entered Izuku's domain, where he was grinning broadly and pointing to various statues and paintings. He would tell her everything he knew about the technique utilized in them. Her parents had shown her how intelligent people would talk down to individuals who didn't know as much as they did, erecting a wall to keep them apart and never regard them as equals. That was not Izuku. He never tried to make her feel less. Everything he said was done so she could understand. If nothing else, she found herself curious to learn more. She loved seeing him content. He didn't stutter when talking about art or eccentricities, she noted. In addition to being sure of his knowledge, he was enjoying himself. In fact, Izuku was having fun with Momo. He never even realized that he had never severed the connection between their arms. She was walking as though they were a couple, her arm in a link with his. This was ideal for Momo Yaoyorozu. She was relishing their intimate touch. Izuku eventually proposed that they take a seat on a bench. Momo acknowledged that since they would be walking for a long time, she had decided to wear shoes instead than heels. Izuku finally became aware of their arm positions as they sat on the bench. His nerves advised him to leave and let go for a bit. However, he sensed that it would be hurtful to Momo. He simply relaxed and allowed his face to flush. When Momo realized this, she couldn't help but giggle. Izuku nodded, his face reddened, nervous. She gave a little chuckle. Me too. He was surprised by this. His emotions were evident on his face, but he would never have imagined Momo was anxious given how at ease she appeared to be. Izuku found himself rejecting with his head because he couldn't find the right words to say. I honestly was worried you wouldn't have a fun time, or that you wouldn't like me being so close to you. Momo grinned at him since she thought this was cute. One may argue that Izuku was drawn to her attractiveness. Her character, however, was what truly captivated his attention and his heart. How self-assured she was, how she positioned herself with certainty. That she was focused on doing her best and wasn't scared of making a mistake. Momo's best qualities were not her appearance, she had a certain personality. He grinned at her and said, I am enjoying myself. I don't mind being near you. It was Momo's turn to get a touch flushed this time. She was having a good time with him. Neither Momo nor Izuku saw. However, Eraserhead was working as a guard while posing as a civilian. He was staring at them and was taken aback by what he saw. He was aware of Nejire and Izuku. Furthermore, he was informed by Hizashi that he witnessed Midoriya and Jiro sharing a kiss during the Rolling Fires performance. He recalled everything Nedzu had said about the play when he saw the two of them. Perhaps he could have Izuku play the princess and Yaoyorozu play the prince. Yes, that would be effective. Momo and Izuku continued their stroll, but she soon made the decision to take Izuku to a tiny restaurant for lunch after doing some advanced research. The proprietor was a man who had a girl working for him and wore gentleman's attire. A little shop was owned by the two. However, the space was really cozy. It appeared to be an abandoned house from the outside. However, the interior was spotless, with a bar where patrons could sit and enjoy drinks, a few tables and chairs, and what appeared to be a well-preserved jukebox near a vacant open area. The man behind the bar was wearing a butler costume and had a mustache. The small girl next to him was wearing a maid's outfit. He grinned and said, "Ah, customers, welcome, please sit wherever you want." They nodded as they made their way to a table. The girl next him murmured. He smirked at the girl who had to keep herself from fainting at her partner's actions, saying, "Gentle, don't they look cute? Think they are a couple?" She cherished him. When Izuku and Momo placed their tea order, the man suggested a particular brand. Izuku was anxious, but Momo simply put her hand over Izuku's hand at the table and nodded. "Let me share it with you. Take as a bonus for you two being a couple." The shorter girl hurried to the kitchen, followed by the man in the suit, and the man grinned and nodded, saying, "We would be thankful for that." Momo and Izuku simply grinned at the pair. They were unaware that the two people in the kitchen were raving about them. The girl said, "The girl is adorable. She looks so beautiful and dignified," as the father, who went by the name of Gentle, was making tea. Indeed. It is obvious she is of a higher social standing judging by the quality of her clothes and her acting. Still, it's quite obvious too she is smitten by the young man. Though if my assessment is correct, the one doing the courting is the girl. Quite fun, isn't it? The young woman laughed. He nodded and thought of something. "I agree. I love how their clothes look similar." The girl glowed brightly as she slumped backward, saying, "Wouldn't you agree they look like they could enjoy a dance? Why don't you turn on the jukebox, put something slow to get them dancing?" "Gentle. You are the swoon master. The regent of romance," Gentle exclaimed with a giggle as he led the girl to the jukebox and removed her from the floor. Izuku and Momo were talking when the girl walked by, entered a code into the jukebox, turned it on, and selected a slow song. The only thing she could do was hope the girl would ask the male to dance. It didn't take long for Momo to smile at Izuku as the jukebox music began. The boy's cheeks reddened as she asked, "Would you say that you are a good slow dancer, Izuku?" She got up and held out her hand, palm up, hoping he would put it on hers. She had a secret fear that Izuku wouldn't accomplish it. She was taken aback, however, when the child gave her his hand after closing his eyes and nodding to himself. With a radiant smile, Momo brought Izuku toward her and into the open area beside the jukebox. He blushed when she smiled at him. He put her hands where she pointed and nodded, saying, "Just follow my steps." Anyone familiar with slow dancing would be aware that Momo kept her hands in the same position as a guy and that Izuku's hands were in the same position as a girl's. The young couple was dancing, and Gentle and Minami were watching. The man grinned as he glanced at her. She nodded enthusiastically when he asked, "Would you like to dance too, my lady?" He used his trick to make the air in a circle elastic so that she could step on it and be closer to his face. Enjoying the gentle melodies of the music, both couples danced softly. However, Momo Yaoyorozu was the one who was having the most fun. "Thanks, Izuku," she said with a radiant smile as she drew him nearer to her. The intended effect of the abrupt action was to surprise Izuku. She grinned and said, What for? I haven't done much." Humble as always, they danced together, with no distance between them. She grinned and drew him closer so she could plant a kiss on him. "You made me smile. You make me happy all this time. I dare say that is something big to do," she said. It was quick, but Izuku was surprised by the kiss on his lips. Gentle and Minami were taken aback by the girl's performance. After the kiss, she led the boy in their slow dance while grinning the entire time. Both dancers couldn't help but smile. Despite his embarrassment, Izuku enjoyed spending time with her. "Thanks, Momo." He grinned, and his grin was so sincere that it briefly caused the self-assured Momo's unbreakable wall to split as red ravaged her cheeks. As they danced to a new tune, Izuku simply smiled and asked, What do you mean? The girl gave him a gentle grin and said, for this, inviting me, and well, it is my first time dancing, and I am happy as with you. Gentle and Minami had to return to the kitchen in order to let out their emotions. Anytime Izuku, anytime. The girl said with excitement, you saw that? She was so suave, while Gentle nodded. Indeed. I must say, that girl does know how to captivate a lady or boy. I am honestly wondering who is who in that relationship. The young woman laughed. He laughed and asked, does it matter, Gentle? Both shop employees found themselves enjoying watching the pair dance. No, the only thing that matters is they are happy. Moreover, I believe that is quite obvious. By the conclusion of their Sunday, the bright day was beginning to show hints of the orange hues that were adorning the sky, hinting to the afternoon before nightfall. When Momo Yaoyorozu dropped Izuku Midoriya off at his house, the horizon was adorned with gentle orange hues. Both were enjoying the cool lunchtime air without their jackets. Momo had demanded that they walk the remaining distance to his house. The last thing she wanted was for Sunday to end. They would once more be classmates when school started tomorrow. They wouldn't share the same things tomorrow. Momo was concerned about that. The aspect of Izuku she observed today pleased her. She enjoyed how she could see him and how he saw her. It just fit. They were a part of a matryoshka, which is ironic. A piece that was part of a whole set. And that was it? Izuku nodded, blinking. Izuku, mind closing your eyes? He closed his eyes and said, sure. Momo began making a matryoshka with a smile. A unique one. Okay. You can open your eyes. Izuku was shown a matryoshka doll when he opened his eyes. This one features a picture of him and Momo together. As a matryoshka doll. You are supposed to open it and see what it has inside. She grinned at him. He is ushering it open. He and Momo were on each side of the first doll. The second showed him and her drawing nearer to one another. And in the third, they're dancing together. He grinned at this, and Momo flushed. Izuku found himself nodding nervously as he said, I had a great time today, and I would like if you let me take you on another date, only if you want. When he said, I would love that. If you want we can have another date, Momo blushed and gave him a fervent hug. She kissed his face and said, yes, I would love to take you out again, before gathering herself and heading to the waiting limousine. She left a flushed Izuku at the door and waved, see you tomorrow, Izuku, on his face. And one set of girls who witnessed the entire encounter were in awe. Momo Yaoyorozu was a prince, the two agreed. It was up for debate what that made Izuku. Izuku quickly went to his room and set the matryoshka doll on his desk. Then he had a memory. The dolls often had 4 sections, didn't they? When he got to the one with him and Momo dancing, he opened the doll once again and was pleasantly surprised to see that the final doll showed her kissing his cheek. Izuku gave the doll a tender grin. His mind replayed Himiko's remarks. He had nothing wrong with letting emotions blossom in his heart. He enjoyed Momo's charm, Kyoka's spirit, Nejire's outlook on life, Itsuka's coolness, Pony's joy, Konoko's cheers, Reiko's calming aura, Himiko's warmth, etc. He began drawing, a sketch of the dance between him and Momo, or something he could visualize. A situation in which a pretty and kind girl developed feelings for someone who might not be like her, however, she gave him the same look. Love-filled, warm eyes. Those eyes would probably be less noticeable tomorrow. They would be classmates once more tomorrow. Under their classmates' scrutiny and gaze. Who knows, though? Today's dance will always be a part of him. And the sketch, together with the priceless matryoshka, will always serve as evidence of it. Whatever happens tomorrow, he would have to deal with it, one step at a time.
I will continue this story in next part. Till then, bye bye.